A very warm welcome to all of you. StudyIQ IAS English presents a detailed discussion of GS Paper 1. So with me is Abhishek Singh Rathore and Bhuvan Jha and myself, Ashish, and we'll be discussing in detail with compartmentalized discussion of history, geography and society. That's what GS Paper 1 is all about. And if we just talk just an overview or brief analysis overview, I think 6 questions were coming from history.
Exactly.
And if Abhishek, if I'll ask you, how many questions from ancient India? That would be around
3 questions exactly.
3 questions exactly. And this time we have not seen any art and culture question.
Exactly.
And so that was a big surprise.
In fact, medieval question is there.
In fact, medieval question is there. And any inputs from geography side?
So when it comes to geography, we are looking at 8 questions, and they span the entire expanse of the syllabus. So we'll be discussing each one of them, and you are looking at questions from fjords to say climate change, food security, the entire expanse of it coming up.
And static and current, both.
Yes, a mixture of both, a healthy mixture of both. Yes.
So yeah, a lot of interconnectivity we see in this paper. Amazing paper, by the way. So we'll start with modern Indian history, and then we'll go to I think geography yes. And then followed by ancient and society section. So that's a big chunk out there. Not to forget, society has around
6 questions.
6 questions out there. So society is indeed a very healthy challenge for all of us. Right?
This time, actually, they have connected the society as well as certain topics of history along with that. So it looks like a question from history, but that is a question of society, in fact. So a lot of interlinking has been done in the subjects.
Well, that is all what UPSC is all about. So let us see that, and we'll start with modern Indian questions. Let us begin with that.
Right.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you. We'll join again. Thank you. So the first few modern history questions, which I think were in a way most surprisingly sticking to the static subject. The very first modern history question that came was the differentiation that examiner wanted you to discuss between the concepts of what Mahatma Gandhi's worldview was and Rabindranath Tagore's worldview was, right? So on 2 parameters, basically let us first see the question, and I always tell my students to assess the demand of the question. Jitna ho sakta hai, how much possible, please assess the demand of the question. The first question says, what was the difference between Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore in their approach towards education and nationalism? Now, this indeed is a very interesting proposition. It means that, they're telling you to analyze the educational and nationalism worldviews of both Gandhiji and Tagore. Now, in most of our traditional books, in most of our books which we cater for UPSC, Gandhi's nationalism is well discussed, well thought out, well read also, but not Tagore's nationalism and his views on education. So that is the challenge which is presented here for the students out there. Let us see. While giving the introduction, please give a brief background. Most of the time, introduction is nothing but your connection with the examiner. This is what we also say it in the classes, particularly in our StudyIQ classes. We always say that you please write your introduction by saying that, dear sir or madam, whosoever has set the paper from UPSC, with love and respect, I understand the demand of your question, right? So stick to the question out there, which is saying that Gandhi's and Rabindranath Tagore's views on education, what was the difference between their approaches? So you have to line out the differences on the approaches between them. So just you have to bifurcate both of them on the questions of education and nationalism. Let us first see the differences out there. Particularly on education, let us start your answers with education, because education is what spurns and education is what leads to nationalism. So the first thing is that in a simple way, holistic development. Mahatma Gandhi emphasized on educating the child through a very complete emphasis on the development of child, not just a bookish kind of knowledge that he wanted. Rabindranath Tagore wanted realization or self-realization through education. For example, a very interesting aspect of Rabindranath Tagore's education comes forward during the time period of Swadeshi movement itself. Yes, You heard it right. The Swadeshi movement and his subsequent establishment of Vishwa Bharati University at Shantiniketan. These both events shaped his view of how an education should be. In one of the letters that he wrote to Mahatma Gandhi, he writes that my life's work is there in the establishment of Vishwa Bharati University. So if you want to start your even answers by saying that Rabindranath Tagore launched his worldview on education by starting his experimental school in Vishwa Bharati University, that would be the best answer or best introduction possible. So please do that. Okay. Followed by that, it says that Mahatma Gandhi further focused on educating the common man for societal betterment, right? So that your education should lead to the betterment of society as such, not just you becoming a serviceable commodity and becoming nuts and bolts or becoming a part of the larger globalization process and not helping the society as such. Means he was saying that you should give back something to society. For example, Rabindranath Tagore's ideas was a bit different. He said that, okay, education should be aimed to produce an ideal worldview. You know what he used to say? He used to say that the views of Tapovan, this word has been used in his essays. He has used the word Tapovan, means forest of penance. He used to say that education should be done in free scale, in freestyle places, and should be done in a way that was suited to the ideal climatic conditions of India. No classrooms, no four walls of the classroom, bricks and mortar was not desired by Tagore. Then it says that he promoted Indian culture, civilization through education. That is Gandhi's main worldview and main push towards education, whereas Tagore was more of a world citizen. He wanted Indian spiritualism or Indian knowledge to be having a marriage with Western education also. He did not discard the Western education system, nor did he discard the principles of Western ideas, be it Christianity or be it with the realm of modern democratic theories. But for him, a marriage or an alliance between Western and Eastern thoughts, Western and Indian thoughts, was the prerequisite of his educational ideas. So please do highlight that. Understand, you don't need to highlight the things which are common to both Rabindranath Tagore's and Gandhi's ideals. That would be counterproductive to your answer. Don't do that. Then, particularly critical of machine technology, advocating simplicity, that was Gandhi's ideals, or Rabindranath wanted to have more scientific knowledge along with traditional knowledge. This hymns with the earlier version. Or for that example, he started with Nai Talim. Gandhiji was very much concerned about learning through practicality, or what you call as vocational system of education. If you want to add a point further, you can add a point that Gandhi gave his ideas of education with Wardha scheme, or Wardha session of the Indian National Congress that was happening in 1939-40s. And at that point of time, with the help of Babu Jagjeevan Ram and Zakir Hussain, he was making a new vocational and skill-based education, the template of Indian education. That also needs to be told. Understand that this is a history answer. And hence, you need to provide some very important facets of timelines of history when and how Gandhi was shaping his ideas. Okay, so Wardha scheme of education or Wardha system of education that was launched, that was very important part of skill-based or vocational education. Whereas Rabindranath Tagore was more concerned with curiosity-driven learning. For example, skills in the form of art, dancing, music, paintings. For example, you must be knowing about the concept of Rabindra Sangeet. That was a form of, if I would say, indigenously developed school of music by Rabindranath Tagore. Or for that matter, even paintings. That was his own style. That was his version of skill and, if I would say, craft. But Gandhi's version of skill and craft was having an emphasis on giving such vocations that would cater to employment. So, for example, he always used to say, use charkha, है ना? So charkha was a symbol of your self-assertion or your if I would say, ability to stand on your own feet economically. That is the difference between Tagore and Gandhi. These differences are very minute. So please understand that this answer is not that simple as it is told. As I told you, you all read about Gandhi's point of views or his nationalism or his ideas of education, but you don't read Tagore's that much. You will have a surprise because now we are going to discuss Tagore's view on nationalism. That is very different. That is altogether very different from the others. Now, there are various other important points. We have added a lot more in order for you to just write an answer. But the other part of the answer is, not to forget, nationalism. The very first thing that nationalism says, for example, with respect to Mahatma Gandhi, is that he believed in the world view of nationalism or the Eurocentric approach to nationalism. For example, struggle for justice, equality. That was Gandhi's ideas of nationalism. Means we are striving for our human rights. I'm fighting with the Britishers because I want liberty, equality, fraternity for my own countrymen. I want liberty within my country, within my lands. Now, with respect to Rabindranath Tagore, that was not the same. How so? He criticized Indian version of nationalism. Please understand that. As I told you, many classical books that you read, be it Spectrum or be it Bipin Chandra or be it any other book for modern India that you read, be it Shikhar Bandyopadhyay also, books don't dwell that much on Rabindranath's views of nationalism because Rabindranath Tagore's view on nationalism is not matching with other leaders who were there participating in our freedom struggle. So for him, that is for Rabindranath Tagore, nationalism, which was practiced in India, was narrow, was selfish. And he considered it as a source of power, as doing another kind of petty politics. He criticized Congress time and again, he criticized the moderates, he criticized the extremists also. He said that what you are doing is just a small part of service to yourself. You are serving yourself, you're not serving the people out there. He was against a fragmentation of the world on the lines of nations. He was that world is a united place, world is a united power. Differentiating in the name of nation is nothing but limiting our human potential. That's what Rabindranath Tagore used to think. But look, for Gandhi, nationalism was basically an anti-colonial in character. Most of our nationalism is nothing but the birth of anti-colonialism. You fight with the Britishers, nationalism comes to the force. Britishers were racial. So our nationalism is anti-racial. Britishers were, if I would say, civilizationally telling themselves that we are superior. But we wanted to tell them, no, you are equal to us and give us equal rights. Britishers used to, divide and rule Indians, or Britishers used to economically exploit Indians. Now, all of that gave birth to Indian nationalism. So it was like a reactionary, result. Nationalism came as because of a reaction to the British policies. Now, that is why we say that it was anti-colonial in nature. Coming to fragmentation, for example, coming to Rabindranath Tagore, he was, as I told you, against the fragmentation of the world politics. But at the same point of time, he thought that nationalism should transcend power politics. It should focus on higher human ideals. He rejected Western concept of nationalism, which had notion of common race, language, and denominations. For example, he said that, look, Indians don't have a common race. Indians don't have a common caste. Indians don't have even a common religion. So how do you build a nation on such different type of people? He used to say that we have not eradicated casteism and you want to eradicate Britishers. Even if the Britishers will go, casteism will remain. That for me is a bigger problem. So for him, nationalism or even practicing nationalism was nothing but a farce. But look at Gandhi. Gandhi believed in the concept of unity in diversity. Gandhi was of the view that ancient time period, the ancient India, was nothing but a rainbow culture. From ancient time period, we have seen different cultures coming up other than the great Hindu culture. So for example, he said that we have honored Buddhism, we have taken Jainism, we have also seen the coming up of Turkish attacks, and Mohammedans have been living in India. Repeatedly, he said about, if I would say, the Hind Swaraj movement. We have, or in his writings of Hind Swaraj, in fact, students can use and write this. Hind Swaraj was paper as well as his series of publications where he voiced his ideas, saying that, look, it's important to have this concept of unity and diversity. I hope now you understand that because of Jawaharlal Nehru, we have taken this concept of nationalism and published it in our notebooks, classes, everywhere, even in our constitution. We celebrate unity and diversity. But that was not so of Rabindranath Tagore's ideas. And lastly, he catered to the concept of absolute non-violence. This is what we think about Gandhi, but not so. Gandhi also went towards pragmatism. For example, he followed the concept of violence during the Quit India movement. And for that, he was not that known for, or he became infamous for. His concept of Ram Rajya is also very important and has to be written in the answer. That he tried to justify by saying that, look, India is made up of numerous castes and class. So this concept, or how do you fairly make the society an egalitarian place? So he said that, look, this can be done only with the help of Ram Rajya concept, the concept where everybody is treated equitably, not equally. That means everybody is to be treated according to their own standing in the society. So that is where the principles of affirmative actions also comes into the questions. We have Article 15 and 16 that goes towards the establishment of so-called Ram Rajya philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi. So a very critical answer, a very critical but indeed a very enlightening answer. And then try and conclude with giving brief analysis of both, that what Rabindranath Tagore and Gandhiji differed on. You will find great difference on the views of their nationalism, but not that much on the views of their education. Following ahead, this is a fairly interesting question, but it has been dealt also as a part of economic economic geography section that bring out the socio-economic effects of the introduction of railways in different countries of the world. So I will read and I will leave it to the society part of the discussion out there. I guess Gandhiji, I have seen many comments out coming here, and it says that I guess Gandhiji was against affirmative actions. Mostly no. He was working for Harijans. Okay. In fact, he gave resignation from Congress because of the questions of depressed classes. So he was very much concerned with the questions of depressed classes. In fact, Gandhi was the first person in Indian freedom struggle, even before Dr. Bhimrao Babasaheb Ambedkar. It's because he started with the agenda of untouchability for the first time. 1919, the question of non-cooperation movement. He came up with the idea of abolition of untouchability. At that point of time, Babasaheb Ambedkar was not there that much popular in the scene, but the question of affirmative actions was started by him. It became a discussion, it became a national agenda. Okay, so I'll leave this question out there for the next faculty to discuss. And then you have some important features of the Vedic society that will be a part of the ancient lecture out there. Okay, and following most of the questions now that deal are from ancient and medieval time period. So again, leaving that to the other faculty, except for question number 13, which was now a part of the modern Indian history. And I would say that this was a fairly simple question. It said that how did colonial rule affect the tribals in India, and what was the tribal response to the colonial oppression? Now, this have been read by many students. In fact, any diligent student preparing for UPSC will read tribal movements. But the question is not that simple. Please ask yourself what the examiner is demanding from this question, right? As we always say it in the class, please assess the demand of the question. Read it 2 to 3 times to 4 times, whatever puts you to the demand and to the core of the question. It says that how did the colonial rule affect the tribals in India and what was the tribal response? So rule and response. So reaction and response, both of them. Now, you have to start with the assertions or the arrivals of British India in India. For example, from 1600 itself, we have the establishment of East India Company, but your answer will not start from there. The answer should start when East India Company is becoming an administrator. The process of becoming from trader to administrator is where people start feeling the pinch. And one of those people are tribals. So basically, you have to start from the time period of 1757, that is from Plassey and then followed by Buxar. That is where Britishers start interfering into the tribal way of life. They are first interfering in Indian rulers' homes, in their polity, and then they are interfering in the moment of other Indian groups. So for example, you start with saying that the process of traders, the process of Britishers becoming from traders to administrator is not a straight, simple, forward process. They took their own sweet time, but the time they became administrators, they started interfering in the traditional life, society, polity of those who are affected. And here we are talking about tribals. So you can mention the time period as such. Start with limiting their sovereignty and autonomy. For example, sir, why are there two sessions of GS1 analysis in StudyIQ and StudyIQ English channel? Is because we cater to two different groups, one who want to read it in English and the other who want to see it in Hindi or English languages. Okay, fine. I hope I answered that question. Okay, sovereignty and autonomy. Every time that Britishers attacked Indians, they questioned their sovereignty and autonomy. Now, there are two ways to answer this question. Either you write the timelines from the time period that Britishers started attacking tribals or civil rebellions that started happening. So you can write from the time of Sannyasi rebellion, or you can start from the right of Rampa rebellion or Paika rebellions in Odisha. You choose your timeline. That is fine. Either you can write the events, but just writing the event will not help you establish your point across or argument across. So what you should do is rather highlight such important parameters or notions that sovereignty and autonomy was challenged. How they were challenged? Because as you see in the Bhil revolts, or you see in the coal revolts, or you see, for example, they were told to leave their areas. Bhil revolts happens only when the Marathas are dilapidated, only when the Marathas are reduced to rubble. That is the Maratha political power. See, there is no coincidence that Bhil revolts happened in 1822 because Marathas were routed in the Third Anglo-Maratha War in 1818 itself. So after the sovereignty of Marathas are reduced, then the Bhils are put to the question that will you leave your land or not? Your protectors are no more, your kings are no more, and hence you are put to question. We are the new kings and you should leave your land or pay taxes. So their autonomy was challenged, their mobility was challenged, their sovereignty was challenged. You put across your argument and you give an example. This is the best way to qualify your statement. Only argument will not fetch you marks. This is one argument and this is the example of that argument. That will help you a lot. For example, land resource and resource right. This was a major issue why tribals were attacked. For example, tribals were the dwellers of the forest areas. There is no doubt. Tribals used to live in the mineral rich areas. Think of the most famous tribal resistance, be it the Munda resistance, happens in Chota Nagpur Plateau. Be it the Santhals, be it the Kols, be it any important movement, they are happening in Chota Nagpur Plateau. Oraos happening in Chota Nagpur Plateau. Why? Mineral rich area, coal rich area still today, right? Along the borders of Bihar and Jharkhand. So the forests and the minerals for whom the tribals used to guard and live by, that was also challenged. So their land and resources, forest and minerals were up for grabs. You can write examples again, giving 1 or 2 examples. There are numerous examples out there. Followed by cultural and religious differences. There was a lot of cultural differences. For example, Birsa Munda, when he was fighting with the Britishers, particularly the time period of 1899, he chose the time period of 24th December to launch his struggle. You know why? Because he wanted to assert his right of self-religion against Christianity. So, when tribals were attacked, their right to their own indigenous religion was also attacked. There was a cultural difference, there was religious difference. Most of the tribes were forced to either choose the right religion or the right path, that is Christianity, and that gave a lot of troubles to the tribal. So yes, cultural and religious differences. Again, you can give examples here. Displacement and exploitation. Many economic historians say that the age-old Jajmani system, there was something called as Jajmani system that tribals used to have in their villages, or for example their age-old jhuming system or the shifting cultivation system that was there, that all was challenged by the Britishers. So for example, the Jajmani system allowed them to have a self-sufficient village economy. Britishers didn't want that. The jhuming cultivation allowed them to move across the hills and plateaus. The Britishers didn't want that. Britishers wanted a settled person so that they can be taxed and they can be attacked and their lands can be confiscated, so on and so forth. All that became reasons for tribal and British conflicts. Santhal, Bastar, valid examples, ample examples that you will get. This is by far a very simple answer, but this is where I want to tell you one very important experience after giving number of means. My dear students, the more the easy a question seems, equally tough is the marking. Understand that. Now everybody can write on tribals. Anybody will write on tribal. But you will now fetch marks relatively. Let's suppose if your friend has also given mains and he is also writing this answer, you and your friend's answers will be compared. So try and give as much enrichment to your answer as much possible, because marks are always relative. Marks are always subjective. You will be given answer, or you will be given marks according to the best answer that the examiner has read, and that is among the candidates that is coming up. So never underestimate the importance of an easy looking question. This is an easy looking question, but don't underestimate that you will get good marks. Give your best, or more sweat and blood to even easy questions. That is where you ace the examinations. I hope you understand that. And now, the next part of the answer is the tribal response. The tribal response is nothing but tribal revolts. So, very quickly you have to say that tribal revolts were nothing but, Ranajit Guha is a very celebrated historian in this, and he says that Jal, Zameen and Jungle was responding to the tribals. Sarkar, Sahukar were the perpetrators of the tribals. He says that in his subaltern studies, and you will read it. The tribal revolts are beautifully covered by the writings of Sumit Sarkar or Shekhar Bandyopadhyay, even Bipin Chandra. So this is basically writing the tribal oppressions or writing the tribal revolts one after the other, the Santhal revolt or the Kherwad movement, which does not require much of discussion, right? The Birsa movement, etc. And then you can end the answer by writing just 4 or 5 movements, which is possible. That is the tribal answer. That is the tribal response. Okay. And thereby putting across your question. I hope this part is not required, because tribals' participation in the national movement is not asked in the question. If you read the question again, how did the colonial rule affect the tribals? and tribals' response to colonial oppression, that is not asked. But later on, tribals did participate in the national movement. You can say that they participated in the civil disobedience movement, very important. The Heraka cult of Rani Gaidinliu was very much important, where she was jailed during the time of civil disobedience movement. Do write their participation in non-cooperation and Quit India movement briefly, not that much, in detail. You can write, for example, Bardoli Satyagraha or Formation of All India Tribal Leagues by Jaipal Singh Munda, a very important leader of the tribals out there. Don't forget to write, if you're writing, Rani Gaidinliu. As I said, she becomes an important member of the civil disobedience movement resistance from Manipur and is jailed from that time till 1947. And just end your answer with a good looking conclusion, paraphrasing everything, and your job is done. I hope this clears the picture for you. For more important geography section and later on ancient section, we'll be having other faculties. Right now, we'll be now panning towards the society section as such. And for that, I'll be I beg your pardon. Now I'll be panning to the geography section as such, and for that I'll be inviting my other colleague, Mr. Bhuvan Jha, for his important understandings and articulations on the matter. But before we even go about that, understand that this paper required you to take most of your understandings with respect to interlinkages. Now, geography section is one such beautiful questions which have been carved. I think the faculty responsible for that will be able to tell you more about that. So here to you, Bhuvan.
Thank you, Ashish sir. Right, so without wasting much time, let's get into it. Right, just a second and let me get it sorted. Meanwhile, those of you who were you have seen the paper, okay, very quickly just let me know what's your first feedback, okay, because when I looked at the paper in the afternoon, okay, so 8 questions, all the questions spanning the entire syllabus. Firstly, okay, not even say one question has come out of the syllabus. That is the first thing. Good evening everyone, guys, all of you, most welcome. Okay, not even one question is from outside this syllabus. Let's get that straight first. Okay, now let's get started with the questions. Firstly, if you have seen the paper, okay, you must have realized by now that for a particular geographical or geography related concept, one aspect that you are required to know is to develop the linkage between, say, geography and an individual, geography and a community, geography and a country. Right? Good evening guys, all of you, most welcome. Thank you for joining. Okay, so if you have seen the questions on, say, Purvaiya, okay, monsoons. Now they are not just asking about, say, Purvaiya, say how does the Bay of Bengal branch enter. That's far too easy for UPSC. What they have gone ahead and asked is the cultural factors that arise out of the Purvaiya monsoonal part of it. Okay, so therein is your first learning, guys, that geography has to be seen in correlation to the other subjects and, say, the other tangents that arise out of it. Okay, good evening guys, all of you, thank you for joining. I'm most grateful for your presence. So let's get started, shall we? Let's look at this question now. Discuss the consequences of climate change. 1 second. Okay. Discuss the consequences of climate change on food security in tropical countries. 3 aspects we need to focus on first. Climate change, food security, tropical countries. Okay. Now, first things first, let's get started. 1 second, very quickly. Okay. Before I showcase or show you my answer, when you're talking about climate change, guys, okay, if you're taking down notes, I'll be happy. Or else don't worry, I'll be sharing the entire PDF on my Telegram channel. Okay, that'll be available. All right. So when you're looking at, say, climate change first, what is it that you should be focusing on inside your answer? Let's look at that. The approach has to be discussed first. Okay. So you're looking at, say, access to food. Okay. Yes. Would you agree with me? Access to food, number one, right? Thereafter, not just access but availability of food. Okay? Availability of food is another tangent that I should be aware of. Correct? What else am I looking at? Say the utility that arises out of it. And eventually, I'm also looking at stability of the food system that is evolved. Now, don't worry if you're getting confused here as to what am I talking about. Because let's go with the basics. Like I always say in my class, शुरुआत से शुरुआत करते हैं. Okay. Now let's look at food security then. Okay. Or give me a second. Let me go ahead and get the PDF. Is it? Yes. Perfect. This is what I'm used to using. So we'll use this only. Okay. Let's look at, say, food security now. Okay. Food security. Now, most students, the mistakes that they will do, they will focus only on the agro concept. We had discussed this in the class in the afternoon. Yes. That your answer should not just focus on the agro concept, guys. Okay. You're also looking at what are the other concepts. Go ahead and tell me. Are you just looking at crops? No. You're also looking at livestock, for example. That is a part of my food security. Right? What else are you thinking of? Are you thinking of fisheries or aquaculture? Are they a part of my food security that are threatened by climate change? Yes, they are. Of course they are. Okay. What else am I looking at? You're looking at, say, genetic resources. Why not? They also form a major part of my food security. Of course, they are also threatened by climate change. Are they not? And finally, of course, how can we forget my forest? Without that, nothing else really exists. True or not? First, let's get this. Identify the stakeholders, guys. Unless and until you have identified that my food security, when you're talking about food security, these are my primary components. And please understand, each of them are going to be threatened by climate change and the consequences that arise out of it. Yes or no? Right? ये मुझे बताओ पहले. Are you clear here? Now, when you're talking about climate change, herein is your second point. Okay, focus on the approach. The approach is important for you to grasp. When you're talking about climate change, you're talking about, say, the direct problems, the direct consequences, as well as the indirect consequences. Can you identify, say, for example, what are the direct consequences of climate change? Think of one. Let me know one. For example, elevated temperature levels. Yes, a direct consequence of climate change. Absolutely. You're also looking at what? Precipitation levels. Increasing or decreasing, depending on, say, wherever you are based out. Effect of climate change. What is the other indirect effect of climate change that I'm looking at? Am I looking at, say, the process of pollination that will be affected by climate change, which is, by the way, related to food security? Remember the bees. Remember all the insects. They are a major part of the pollination process, without which, again, food security is directly threatened. So you talk about pollination. Hakina. Correct? Tell me the rest. Are you thinking of, say, more pests coming up? Are you thinking of more disease vectors? Yes or not? And we'll discuss. I'll tell you what exactly do they each of them mean. Don't worry. If you're getting confused right now, don't worry. But identify the stakeholders first. Okay? Finally, if you have talked about disease, you also will talk about invasive species. Yes? Now that I've understood, okay guys, this is my primary stakeholder. When I'm talking about climate change, I have to talk about the direct consequences, the indirect consequences. When I'm talking about food security, I'll talk about each one of them. Yes or no? Let me know in the chat. If you're able to grasp this approach, then answer writing is a mere formality. Okay? Because most students will not be going ahead and including each of these guys. Or maybe one or two. Not all. And I don't blame them. Why? Because the preparation is myopic. The forward-backward linkages, they have not been taught to think in a holistic manner. The civil service expects you to think in a holistic manner. Okay? The primary training is not in Labasna, guys. It is here when you write your mains. That is where you show that you're capable of that larger thinking. That yes, probably 20 years down the line, you can go ahead and frame a policy for a country of 140 crore people. Yes or not? Okay. Now let's look at, say, livestock. Okay. Chalo, ek karke ab discuss karte hain. Okay. Let's look at, say, livestock now. Number 1. Okay. Livestock. How is my livestock going to be affected by climate change? Guys, tell me, brainstorm. Tell me. Are you thinking that yes, because of climate change, my animal productivity is going to be negatively affected? Of course. A cow milk or a cow that was producing, say, 50 liters of milk. Now, less access to grazing, which means less productivity coming out of it. It's now going to give you 10 liters of milk. Food security. Haan ki na? Number 2. Brainstorm with me, guys. You will give me the answers. You know the answers. I've told you this in the afternoon session. Are you thinking my animal health will be affected? Of course. If the productivity is low, the health will obviously be low. True. What will be my third option here when you're talking about livestock? Are you thinking my yield of forages, that is also going to be affected? Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. And obviously the feed crops affected. Now, realize this fact. Each of them individually and in conjunction with other factors will affect my food security. Less food, malnourished animals, diseases, deaths. Pradeep, you are hitting the nail on the head. Absolutely correct. I'm happy to see that. Good. Good. That is the approach I want you to grasp here. Good. Okay. Now we have discussed the first stakeholder. Done. Livestock. If you write 3 points here, 2 lines each. Good job. Moving forward. Next. In fact, if you want to go ahead and further, magnify this answer, a small evidence will not hurt you. Say, for example, when we talk about the MENA countries, yes, Middle East, North Africa, or you talk about, say, Sub-Saharan Africa. Okay. Now, therein you find that after a drought, close to 60% of the animals there are either dead or their productivity is reduced. Now, anyways, North Africa, a country that is not, say, nutritionally secure, okay, that is, say, dealing with extreme levels of poverty. Therein, you have a drought because of climate change. The first effect, the animals suffer. The animals suffer, the people suffer. People suffer, communities suffer. Communities suffer, the nation suffers. Food security. You see, holistic understanding. You will not be able to write the good answer unless and until you have done the first step. You have identified what am I going to structure my answer around. Okay, let's look at the second one now. If you have done the livestock bit, moving forward, let's look at the second option that I have for you. Okay, what was the second stakeholder that we identified, guys? Let me know. So let's understand forests. Let's talk about forests now. Now, the question discusses what? Tropical countries. The tropics between 23 north, 23 south. Majority of your population lives in that area. In fact, the global south that we discuss often, we often talk about. Hindu and Express will be publishing articles on an industrial scale about global south. Okay, you have a large amount of people sitting there, dealing with extreme levels of poverty, and their livelihood, their sustenance, their way of life dependent on forests. Now, if the forests are threatened, so is the nutritional outcomes. In fact, the whole ambit of food security of this entire population threatened. Hakina, tell me, are you able to grasp how am I going and framing the answer? Because if it was left up to me, this is how I would go about writing my answer. Or even before I've started writing my answer, in my head, I'll be going and making that chart. Yes, this is the points I'm going to touch on, even if 2 lines each, but I will include it. Do you understand that? So, forests, point 1, let's see. So, you have, say, 1 billion plus people who are codependent on forest and the forest health. The health of the forest is important. Okay, done. They are going to be affected. Climate change is going to directly. Good. See the answers coming through. You guys know it. IPA. Good answer. More forest fires. Why? Because you have climate change. Your forest, the nature, the health of the forest is now changing. More wildfires will come. Absolutely correct. Bataiye, you guys know it. I'm telling you, just apply your brain. Mains questions are not that difficult. Okay. All you need to do is just little application of brain. Your trees, are they going to be under stress? Not just say from the lack of water, but also from the over availability of water. Say drought and floods, both. Yes, of course. If people are displaced, that's also going to affect the forests. Desertification is going to happen, true. Wildfires is going to happen, true. Hakina, you guys know the answer. Go ahead, give me my third point here. Tell me how, if I'm approaching it this way, you can solve any question, I can assure you. Right? You're looking at increased, say, water and wind erosion. What happens then? Your topsoil, which is the whole basis of your forests, all this tropical forest require the soil. That soil is intrinsically linked to the health of the forest. But with increased water and wind erosion, the health of my forest, once again, bye-bye tata. Reduced fertility, Vaishnavi, excellent answers there. What else? Tell me, think of it. You're looking at what? More of good, now you're thinking of tropicals. Go a little higher. Aren't you looking at, say, more landslides? Yes. Aren't you looking at, say, more avalanches? Obviously, not in the tropical case, but yes, are they not linked? More landslides, more avalanches, more changes that will happen in the range of the forest. True or not? In the range of the forest, say the expanse of a forest. Say, for example, earlier it was, say, 100 hectares. Because of all of these together and in conjunction with other factors, now this gets changed to 50 hectares. What happens? The people, the community, the nation suffers. Why? Because your forests have now reduced. Why did they reduce? You and I didn't go ahead and cut and chop all the logs. No. Climate change did, which you and I are responsible for. Correct? Genetic species, when we discuss the dimensions, Vaishnavi, then we talk about the invasive species. Okay. In terms of the forest health, these are largely the essence that we are looking to capture. Okay. Now let's look at, say, the third stakeholder here. Let's look at it. This is how you're going to approach your answer, guys. You know, my job is not to tell you a model answer, because model answers are found abundantly. My job is to teach you how to write an answer, and that's what I will make sure and ensure you do that. Okay, let's look at the third factor here that you can go ahead and tell me about, say, fisheries and aquaculture, guys. Think of it now. How will climate change affect my fisheries and aquaculture? Number one, point one. Tell me, bataiye. What are you thinking? Say your sea surface temperature increasing. Yes? Because of your sea surface temperature increasing, you have coral bleaching going on. You have ecosystems that are fragile, getting destroyed. Aren't coral systems supposed to be high in productivity? Yes, as comparable to, say, the mangrove systems. If your coral reefs are gone, your fishes that are all colorful in nature, Discovery, National Geographic, you will see all those colorful fishes dead. Why? Because the whole climate change affected them negatively. Right? Your ocean circulation, is it going to be affected? Absolutely. We already know El Nino, La Nina, Enso, Modoki. Of course, it's not just a geographical phenomenon. It has real life applications that's happening beneath the ocean water. In fact, you will be surprised to know there is one concept, the increased tropicalization of mid and higher latitudes. You know what this means? I'll just explain it to you in the briefest form. It has been observed that fishes now are migrating from the tropical areas to mid and higher latitudes. Two connotations here. Number one, in your tropical areas, you have a large amount of population that is dependent on these fishes. With climate change, these fishes now going to the mid and higher latitudes, food security affected. At the same time, wherever these fishes go is a completely new area. They are not used to that area, the area is not used to them. Invasive species. The increased tropicalization of mid and higher latitudes. If you were to go ahead and present it as an evidence under this subheading, why should anyone cut your marks? Do you understand that? Yes? So don't be surprised, for those of you who have written your answers earlier this morning or this afternoon, if you have included these points, even if you have not provided, say, the evidences, if you have included the broad points, done, no issues. Okay, let's look at, say, the third option here. Go ahead. What else are you thinking of? Say storm surges, your wave patterns getting changed, all of that hitting the heart of my fisheries and aquaculture. Why? Because status quo is not being maintained. Climate change is changing things radically, not just on the surface of the sea, but also beneath the sea. Your benthic zone, that was, say, earlier sacrosanct, now sees a lot of change because of continuous upwelling and downwelling. There it is. Your benthic zone is threatened, which means the whole life, the health of the ocean column is threatened. Yes or not? Bataiye mujhe. That is the way you approach a good answer, guys. I'm time and again telling you, I'll make you an expert insofar as thinking the stakeholders, the approach for writing an answer. My job is not to tell you just a mere, a sample answer. That obviously will follow. We'll discuss model answers. But for the first question, I want to, in detail, tell you the approach. Correct? Tell me now, what else are you thinking of? Are you thinking in terms of, say, atmospheric warming now? Chalo. This is also one angle that we should explore. Chalo. Atmospheric warming happening. Now it is giving me both sorts of changes, physical changes as well as chemical changes. All happening why? Because of climate change. Correct? So now what are my physical changes? The ones that we discussed above. These are my, say, physical changes that I approach. My chemical changes, my salinity of the ocean. Variable now, increasing in, say, the concentration. Correct? My oxygen concentration, increasing. BOD, increasing. You're looking at increased ocean acidification happening. You see? If you're able to quickly generate these points, and I generated them in what, 15 minutes? The time, say, less than 15 minutes, the time an aspirant gets. Correct? Similarly, genetic resources. Let's look at genetic resources angle. Yes? So what are the genetic resources? For example, one obviously is, say, your pollination is affected. True. Number two, you're looking at, say, insects or other microorganisms. Now that have a reduced generational cycle, that earlier if their lifespan was, say, 60 days, now you find that their lifespan has come down to 30 days. Because of that, they are able to go ahead, reproduce more and more. Generational cycle has now decreased, which means more of them in a lesser amount of time, which means what? That you are going to be faced with a multitude of challenges. They are going to evolve and mutate into newer forms that you do not know the outcome of. Correct? Hekiri. See, the answers are coming by yourself. This is what I expect. Because most of you, in fact, most of you would have gone through your NCRTs, your books. In fact, the students of the Prelims to interview batch, the one that I'm associated with, they will tell you, this is the exact approach that we take in any question. Any concept, you go ahead and approach it in this manner, you will never forget. Mutations will be observed. Correct, Pradeep. Good. Eutrophication of water bodies, all of them, all of the concepts of environment have to be included in this geography answer. This is what the linkage that I'm talking about, that always focus on in a prelims to interview batch. Right? Now, once you have addressed this issue, you have addressed, say, the climate change, okay, and you have addressed food security and, say, the consequences. But now you need to go ahead and in your, say, last part of the answer, then you go ahead and say, from an individual perspective, from a community perspective, and from a national perspective, how do these factors affect each of them? Think of it. How does a local fisherman, a common farmer get affected by all of this? You will now know the answer. Tell me, what changes for the individual? For example, you wanted to go ahead and, say, sow your seeds during period X to Y. Right? Now, because of climate change and because of all the factors that we discussed, that your, say, soil is changed, your forest is changed, your water availability is changed. So what does that do? Now your risk of investment is much higher for the individual. And bear in mind, we are talking about the small scale farmer in the tropics, the MENA countries, India. Is it not going to straight away affect their livelihood? Are they more at risk or not? Yes, absolutely. The risk factor is absolutely high for the individual. है कि नहीं? Livelihood, correct Tanish? Good. Your income levels? Yes. Your income levels higher or lower? Your income levels are affected. Correct. Your cost, obviously high now. The cost of production is high. Insurance that the farmer has to pay for, higher. Imagine the effect that has it on the ground level farmer. Correct. Think at the community level now. Say a group of farmers, how are they affected? How is a village affected? Right? So you have say lesser availability of resource now. Think in the Indian perspective. Our land holdings are anyway small. Okay? Coupled with these all issues, do you think that our productivity of agriculture will be high? No. One of the primary criticisms is what? That say the productivity of Indian agriculture is very low. Why is that? Obviously one of the reasons is the size of our land holdings, but also the fact that the individual farmer is so much more at risk because of the effects of climate change. Yes? So let's look at the community angle now. So you're looking at say prices of food that will eventually increase. Yes, the prices increase. Again, the risk factor for the community or a group of farmers, say a community group, a farmer producing group, FPC, much more higher for them. Which means that state support needs to be higher, which say countries like India may be able to afford, but will countries in MENA, Middle East, North Africa, will they be able to afford, support their farmers? No. How does that translate into the nation? You are much more vulnerable to shocks. You are much more vulnerable to say geopolitical tensions, for example. The Black Sea Grain Initiative, link it to current affairs. Go ahead, food inflation is going to increase. Your malnutrition will be observed. Why? Climate change. Which part did the climate change affect? All of them. Yes, this is the best way you approach writing an answer. Most students will obviously, they are never taught this way. That is the the hard part of it. Correct? You are also looking at what? Accessibility of food decreased, gone, done, nada. Okay? At the national or say the global level, you are looking at food supply chains. Obviously, if the village is not producing the food, if the community is not producing the food, obviously my food supply is going to be affected. Correct? Which means what? You spend that much more importing food from outside, which means you burn your own money, your forex, bye-bye. Do you understand? This is the approach, guys, that you have to employ from day one. If you are preparing for next year, your approach should be exactly this for every question. Okay? Supply chain disruption, correct? What else? You are looking at food prices again, that will increase. Globally, of course they will increase. Your market volatility will be observed. Yes? Higher volatility. Yes, your import and export behavior will change. For example, countries go ahead and say suddenly bar the export of a particular food grain. Okay? Why is that? Because it is anticipating shocks as a result of say the effects of climate change. True? So this is the way you are going to write your answer. Now let's look at the slides that I have prepared for you. Now that you have understood the approach that is to be employed, let's look at the slides now. Okay? Discuss the consequences of climate change, which we have discussed. On food security, we have identified all the stakeholders. In tropical countries, make sure you mention countries like MENA, India, okay, and the host, even in Southern America, for example. Okay, more so in island states, which have say anyways lesser area, lesser hectares for agricultural production, coupled with the fact that their area that they are say responsible for is reducing and will eventually submerge under the sea. Food security is a problem in all of these. That is it. You have discussed all the consequences of all the angles that is there. Perfect answer. You see, this is how you go ahead and approach, guys. So let's look at the slides that are there now. See, start with how climate change is a challenge to food security in tropical countries. First, identify the tropical countries. Showcase your knowledge of individual sub-regions within the tropical countries. Thereafter, go with the approach that I've mentioned. Helpful, guys? Let me know if you understood my approach, and if you are understanding how this mains game is to be won. Quickly go and leave me a like or a comment. It will really boost my energy up. Go ahead, help me out here, because, well, as an educator, that's the only thing that we look out for, that eventually the student should benefit from all this hard work that we put in, so that the message gets conveyed to my students. Okay? Let me know very quickly. If you have any questions, well, the chat box is absolutely open. Okay? Right, let's look at the second question. The slide will be available on my Telegram channel, so don't need to worry there. Okay, let's look at this question now. Why is the world today confronted with a crisis of, here is the first keyword, availability and access? Now, the answer is therein, guys. It is asking you about number 1, availability, number 2, access, which means water stress or water scarcity has to be discussed, and you discuss it in these 2 factors. Number 1, that you have less of fresh water. Okay, and number 2, that in places where you do have fresh water, for example, India, where beneficiaries of monsoon, no country receives monsoon as much as India does, and yet you find that water stressed areas do exist in India, which means lack of water specific infrastructure. This is the primary gist of your answer. This is what you're supposed to write, right? So you'll talk about the physical aspect, you'll talk about the economic aspect, correct? Thereafter you say, okay, it is a mixture of both natural causes, of course, and you're looking at obviously anthropological causes. Of course, we are also a huge part of this whole mess, correct? So natural causes, anthropological causes. Now, here, obviously without climate change, the discussion is incomplete. So you write a sentence or a couple of sentences about climate change. Now, all this Hindu reading, Indian Express reading, put it to use here. This is a question that begs one good example from current affairs. Talk about the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Yes, which has, you had a particular barrage, a dam that was broken. You had the entire south side of, say, the Crimea that was inundated. What happened there then? Which means food security there was hit, right? Even though water was available, you couldn't use that water. Hai ki nahi? Right? So talk about the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Talk about the collapse of the, say, that particular peace deal, right? So you have an entire area that has limited or no access to clean water, fresh water. Go ahead. What's wrong with that? Write it. Correct? Okay. Now then, after that, after you have given this intro, then go ahead and give the NCERT level answer that the examiner wants to see. But this is where he will stop reading and say, ha, he knows the answer. Perfect. Pakad liya isne nerves question ka. That is it, guys. So after that, you can go and say, okay, you know what? All of this is in my glaciers, locked in glaciers, 3% of fresh water, all the NCERT tables. Then the natural course of the whole thing follows. Correct? Majority of it is locked in glaciers anyways, right? So that is what you're talking about, the availability and the access. When you're talking about access, you talk about lack of infra. And in the way forward, you mention the Indian approach of, say, interlinking of rivers or making aquifers or even going ahead and harnessing monsoon. Because in India's case, we need not have water scarcity. Firstly, there is a variability in rainfall. It is again seasonal as well as regional. One way to overcome that challenge is how? That you go ahead and trap the monsoonal water for use throughout the year. Which means you need critical water infrastructure, point B, where India lacks. India does not lack in A. We have Himalayas, the third pole near us. We should never have water shortage. But we still have. Why? Because we lack here, B. Mention that. That's A. Go ahead. Your town, your city. Look at the lakes around your town and city. Do they look like lakes anymore or do they look like drains anymore? You know better. That is the problem. That water is treated as a commodity. It is treated as a resource. It is not treated as something that you have to safeguard. Correct? that say people don't think about spending water unnecessarily. हाँ ठीक है, पानी तो है. A behavioral change is needed is a part of your way forward. That okay, the government is doing its job. Of course, it's going ahead. It has a policy in place. What should an individual do? A behavioral, a mindset change is needed. Okay. Talk about countries like China or talk about countries like UAE. Huh? Middle East again. They don't have access to water, yet they do perfectly fine. How do they do so? The water intensive crops are not grown there. Think about India. States with falling water level growing sugarcane. कैसे चलेगा फिर? You see? So many points you can include. All you need to do is brainstorm for what? A minute, minute and a half. Come up with the stakeholders. Go ahead. Include all of them. Point wise likho, bullet point. Correct? Ballast water would be, again, Aniket, that is the pollution aspect. You know, obviously, Aniket hints at a very critical aspect that whatever freshwater resources that we have, say lakes, ponds, rivers, okay, or even say pollution leading to say glacial retreat, our glaciers are melting. Eventually, pollution is a major anthropogenic factor. Correct? So, this is going to be the gist of your water question. Okay? Don't worry if you are say not capturing say some of the aspects. For that, obviously, an intensive study of NCERT is recommended. Okay. Besides, unless you have gone through NCERT, some of it might sound like Greek to you. But I know that majority of the serious candidates for next year would have already gone ahead and had a preliminary reading of say the NCERT books, India Physical, India Geography, whatever, the 3-4 books that are there. If you have gone ahead and read them, each of them will make sense to you. Why? Because it's in a linear fashion that we are discussing. High yielding seeds, oil spills, all of them. Good answers, guys. Lekam, we will absolutely do that. You have my word on it. Now that the mains is over, my whole entire focus is you guys. Okay. Let's look at, say, the next question that I have for you. Go through the slides. Okay. Geographical disparities. See. Talk about MENA. Economic disparities. Poor water management, of course. And political factors. That say, river cleaning is indeed a political issue now. Okay, or say river water disputes, water sharing disputes, not just intrastate or interstate, inter-country also, right? You are looking at say China going ahead and building multiple dams and barrages on Brahmaputra. Don't you think that's going to limit the access of water to our people in the northeast? Yes or no? Right? So water again cannot be seen as a tool for coercion, which the Chinese model hints at. For example, the Indian approach to water sharing. You know, India and Pakistan have fought multiple wars, acrimonious relationship, and yet not once has the Indus Water Treaty been compromised. That tells you the Indian approach to water, that we treat it as common goods. The Chinese treat it as their sovereign right. Sorry, that doesn't work that way. Do you realize? You can talk about the IR angle also in this. And I'm brainstorming with you guys. It's not that I've thought of my answers previously. I'm listening to your comments here and I'm coming up with points. That's what brainstorming is required out of you. Things should come out naturally. The natural progression of logic should follow. Correct? Okay, let's move forward to the next question. Okay, how are fjords formed now? NCERT basic question picked out. What are fjords? Okay, understand it in the simplest fashion, guys. Let's do this. Let me change. Okay, if this is my elevation, okay, herein I have say oceans, herein I have a huge glacier, massive glacier moving towards the ocean. Now you know glacier is a huge thing, it's a big fat thing, almost to a depth of 3 kilometers. So when a thing of 3 kilometers moves, it's not going to move without disturbing the other things around it. So what happens? This glacier, when it is moving this side, for example, if this is my glacier, eventually, if this is my ocean, you have a moment when this glacier, a particular part of it falls into the ocean. This becomes my, what do you call it? Iceberg. Iceberg. Right? This is part 1. Part 1 of the fjord formation. Okay, you'll understand what a fjord is. This is what your glacier is moving, towards the ocean. Okay, fjord is to be best understood as what? Its depth is high, it is narrow, okay, and it is fed by a glacier. This eventually becomes what? My U-shaped valley. Okay. Now, once the glacier has moved, my iceberg has broken, fallen into Dipani, into the ocean. Eventually, a point so comes when the glacier will melt or shall go and meet the ocean. What happens then? Next, let's look at it. What happens then? So now this is my general elevation. Herein is my ocean. Okay. Now the ocean goes and fills up this whole place. Okay. And on both sides you have high cliffs. Right? So higher depth than the ocean. Absolutely. Which means what? It's a prime place for a natural harbor. Good. Yes, it is a prime place for going and tourism purpose. Why? Because once again, surrounded by high mighty peaks on both sides that have been formed due to the erosional activity of the glacier. Right? One of the primary characteristics of identifying a fjord, if your depth is lower than your width, it's not a fjord. The depth of this particular angle has to be higher than the width of the fjord. Only then it becomes called as a fjord. Okay. Where is it found? Well, Norway. This is a Norwegian term. Now, if you want to go ahead and secure some extra marks, you know about fjords and you know that these three things are not known by anyone else. Go ahead and write that fjords, 3 of them primarily in Norway. Right? So you have 2 of them that are UNESCO World Heritage Sites. What does that tell you? That they are areas of complete importance, which is why UNESCO is going and investing money in the upkeep of those fjords. Which is why you find that Lord of the Rings is shot in New Zealand near the fjords. Why? They are picturesque. Tourism. Natural harbor. Brilliant. Okay? You will find all sorts of plants and microorganisms there. They are generally silent areas. Why? Away from the ocean. Hai ki nahi? Correct? Yes, Vaishnavi, you are absolutely correct. You need a glacier for fjord formation. Of course, you are not going to find them, say, in the tropical areas. You will find them in Alaska. You will find them in Canada. You will find them in Chile. You will find them in New Zealand. And obviously, Norway is the birthing place of fjords. Go ahead. Can someone tell me what are those 2 places that are on the World Heritage Site, the UNESCO World Heritage Sites? Go ahead. Can you quickly guess? मुझे बताइए. Right? So you are looking at 3 particular important fjords that you should be aware of. The Nairo Fjord. Okay, that's number 1. Then you have the Geiranger Fjord. Okay. These 2 are UNESCO World Heritage Sites, extremely important. And then you have the Lyse Fjord. Yes, all 3 of them massive tourist places in Norway. You have the government of Norway that made a specific advertisement going and publicizing these places. Why? Picturesque hai na bhai, tourism ke liye. Yes, this is the whole concept of fjords. And why is it picturesque? Well, because of the glacial movement that creates this sort of trough, and again you are surrounded by steep slopes on both sides. Oh, it's a picturesque scene. They are not stupid to go ahead and film Lord of the Rings near the fjords, are they now? True. Are you able to grasp how you are approaching the answer? You know, fjords is studied by everyone. Everyone knows about fjords in the NCERT. It's mentioned in, say, 2 paragraphs. From those 2 paragraphs, you have to extrapolate your knowledge and come up with an answer that includes all of these factors. That essentially is the whole concept of fjords, guys. Okay? Alright, let's look at it. You can start by defining fjords. Then after that, go ahead and talk about the formation of fjords, the glacial erosion, retreat, the sea level rise that I explained to you in 2 diagrams. Thereafter, why are they picturesque, ladies and gentlemen? You know it better now. They have waterfalls, the 7 sister waterfalls in Norway. Biodiversity obviously will be unique. It will be different from the oceanic biodiversity. Correct? That is it. Good answer. Draw a couple of figures there. Done. What else do you need? Is it that difficult? Tell me now. Are mains paper really that difficult? No. No. All you need to do is little bit of application of mind. You know, I had mentioned this in my reel yesterday. I had uploaded a message for all the students who were appearing for mains this year. And I told them, you know the answer to each and every question, my fellows. All you need to do is go ahead and just think for a second. Thoda idhar thanda rakho. You will get the answer. But then I know it's easier said than done because you're looking at 20 questions in a limited amount of time. And it is a little challenging. But then that is what mains is all about. You should be prepared to think in that. And that cannot happen on the ground in the examination hall. No. It has never happened for anyone like that. The people who are the high rankers, they have developed this ability over the course of the last 6, 9, 10 months. Correct? Okay. Let's look at the next question that I have for you. Why is the southwest monsoon called Purvaiya in Bhojpur region? Right? This is India. Okay? If you want to be fancy, go ahead, draw a complete India map. Fine. Even if you have to just draw a simple understanding of India map and then mention that here is my southwest monsoon, the Arabian Sea branch. Right? And you have the Bay of Bengal branch. On one side here, when you go upwards, you have the Purvanchal hills. You have the Patkai Boom. Correct? Now, these follow this pattern. Don't they go this way, guys? Eventually, some of them enter from the Utkal coast. Right? And they go and flow towards, say, Bihar and eastern Uttar Pradesh. Eventually, towards central Uttar Pradesh. Normally, Bihar. Right? So, now understand this. For someone who is standing here in Bihar, where is the wind flowing from? It's flowing from the southeast direction, which is essentially what? Purvaiya. What does Purvaiya mean in Hindi? जो पूर्व से आ रहा है, east से आ रहा है. Which is why you find that it is of lot relevance in the cultural traditions of Bihar and UP. You have Khejri dance, you have food that is prepared, you have conglomerations that are set. Villages come together to celebrate the onset of Purvaiya. That is essentially it. From southwest monsoon, you are now talking about southeast monsoon, specifically for the people in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. Is that not Purvaiya, guys? What is the cultural significance? So many songs in the Bhojpur region are dedicated to the onset of this geographical phenomenon. True or false? Let me know. Anyone here from UP and Bihar, let me know if you have ever heard a song commemorating the onset of the monsoons in the form of Purvaiya Geet. Bataiye mujhe. Tell me. That essentially is Purvaiya. How difficult was it? Correct? Let's look at this. Southwest monsoon in India blow from the southwest, and this is what you're looking at. This particular region, the winds turning, going towards your particular Bihar UP region. Okay. Now, what is the cultural significance? Well, let's look at the cultural significance. Number one, pakoras, hot beverage, all things you ask your mother, your sister, your partner, or even, let's not be, say, gender specific here, your household people. Yes, you have the rains coming. हाँ भाई थोड़ा चाय बना दो, पकोड़ा बना दो. One part of your culture, is it not? You are looking at ghugni, which is in West Bengal. Huh? That is eaten with luchi. Yes. Ghugni is what? Your white peas that you form, say, a chola type of dish. Correct? I don't think that's the song, Your Neighbor, but it's a good try nevertheless. Okay. So, food items, you discuss them first. You discuss about folklore, the tales of Lord Krishna and the peacock dance, Kajri, the folk song. Can someone name me a very famous proponent of the Kajri form? Yes, she is extremely popular in the state of Bihar and UP. This is your homework. Go ahead, read about the Kajri dance today. Who knows? UPSC might ask in the 2024 prelims paper. Okay? You're also looking at what? Agriculture. Obviously, these are monsoonal winds. They have to go ahead and have a bearing on the ground. Okay? So, people are going to celebrate the onset at the same time working in the fields to harness the potential of the oncoming southeast monsoon. Heck nahi. That is what essentially is Purvaiya. Difficult? Is it difficult, guys? Tell me. Is it really difficult? If you're willing to invest 6 months in developing the ability to go ahead and link geography with people, with communities, with nations, with society, with law, why not? Because geography, I have told you, when we were discussing, say earlier, I have told you that geography is the fundamental basis of human existence. If there was no geography, you and I wouldn't be here. Yes? That the concept of nation state has evolved. Why? Because eventually, one fine day, the Indian plate decided to go ahead and crash into the Eurasian plate, and thus the Indian nation state, the primary genesis of that started from there. So we owe our existence to geography. So how can you not link it to each part of our life? From our food, our cuisine, our music, right? Is that not it, guys? Let's go. Next question. Comment on the resource potential of the long coastline of India. Oh my God, this question has been done to death. Huh? Long coastline of India, what is it that you're hoping to find? Now, most students, the first thing that comes to your head, okay, monazite and thorium. Good. That's step one. What are the other resources that you're looking at? Tell me now. All the Hindu lovers, the Indian Express lovers, name me. Okay. One thing we are discussing, say for example, okay, our mineral resources. Fine. You're looking at say monazite and thorium and all of that. Fine. Cool. Number two, tell me what else do your coasts provide you? Are we looking at wind energy? Is it not a resource? Of course it is. Are we thinking in terms of the Hindu and Indian Express people? Are you thinking of polymetallic nodules? India has gone ahead, Matsya 6000, Samudrayan. Is it not to do with our coastline, our exclusive economic zone? Yes or no? Tell me. How many of you considered straight away? किसी को चमका था क्या कि मुझे polymetallic nodules इसमें include करना है? मुझे बताओ. Sorry if I'm breaking my character and coming in Hindi, but I want to get the message across. How are you going to generate points on the spot? This is how you generate points. Okay, polymetallic nodules, wind energy, monazite, thorium. What else are you thinking of? Tidal energy? Absolutely. Good. Good. What else? You will give me the answers, guys. I don't have to teach you. My job is to just handhold you. You will take the journey yourself. You will take the journey yourself. Yes? In terms of resource potential, are you also thinking of, say, the ports that will eventually become the fulcrum of resource management? Yes? Good. Blue economy? Good. Polymetallic nodules is a part of blue economy, which is what we're trying to do, no? We are trying to become an ocean-centric economy. And the first step towards that is what? That you go send a manned crew 6,000 meters in the Indian Ocean to look for those potato-shaped things from where you can harness minerals of all sorts. Yes or no? Yes? So, resource potential of the long coastline of India. Good. We have discussed that bit. They highlight the status of the natural hazard preparedness. Let's do this. Okay, let's look at this. Natural hazard preparedness, which means many of you have seen those Instagram reels where you have a particular mangrove, how it stops my tsunami, how it stops my waves. That's the first, the natural method. Correct? You're looking at mangroves, obviously. Number one has to be this. Are you also thinking of the deltas and their uses? Now these are the natural ones, huh? When you talk about the anthropogenic ones, are you not going to talk about, say, embankments that you create? Yes? To reduce erosion. Are you also thinking in terms of going and maintaining a disaster preparedness system developed by you and I? Last year, for example, the mains asked you about tropical cyclones and say the color coding. Yes? Say orange, red, green. This year, go ahead, talk about that color coding system, but the system behind it. है कि नहीं? Why can't you do that? Generating points, guys. Generating points. Tell me, what else? What else would you include here? Go ahead. Name me some more. Seagrass. Very good. I am liking the answers here. See, this is what I expect. You are all learned individuals, dedicated individuals for next year. All you need to do is just apply your brains. All that examination requires. It's not a road-based examination anymore. You know, that whole concept of UPSC रट के हो जाता है, नहीं होता है. किसी का नहीं हुआ अब. Everyone has to go and apply some part of their grey matter. Correct? Let's look at the slides. Let's look at it. Chalo. Okay, extensive. This is your intro. Firstly, write a couple of lines about India's coastline. Thereafter, come and discuss the individual resource potential, fisheries, tourism, energy. Okay, you're looking at mineral resources, the Mumbai high salt pan, Thoothukudi, Tamil Nadu. Yes, you're thinking of biodiversity and economic ecosystem services, your mangroves, your Sundarbans. Trade and transport, blue economy, as someone mentioned in the chat, very well done in fact. Yes, you go ahead and mention about here itself, in the mineral resources, talk about polymetallic nodules. Why not? Talk about India's efforts to harness polymetallic nodules. Why not? Correct? Let's look at it. Disaster, natural hazard preparedness, your CRZs, Coastal Regulation Zone Regulation, Coastal Vulnerability Index by INCOS, talk about INCOS, talk about EEZ. Why not? ठीक है? Okay, here. Not very difficult now. Does it look very difficult? Because once you've identified the key stakeholders to your answer, the answer writing is quite easy after that. All you need to do is bullet point डालो, लिखो answer, 2-3 line. Geography is about including points in a manner which is easily digestible for the evaluator. You don't want to give him or her extensive paragraphs. No one reads the paragraphs. Okay? Alright. Next question. Identify and discuss the various factors responsible for diversity of natural vegetation in India. Also assess the significance of wildlife sanctuaries in rainforest regions. Two parts to the question. One is about natural vegetation, which is codependent on my temperature, my precipitation, my soil type. My soil type is determined by what? By, say, the climate classification that has been so followed, right? Which will eventually lead to my vegetation. Talk about a bit about, say, if you're aware of Trivartha's climate classification, good. Koppin's climate classification, good. If you're not aware, come to the soil types at least. Write about the soil types, because eventually they are the fuel on which all of your natural vegetation grows. So your answer must compulsorily include at least some in discussion about what the soil types, the different soil types in India are, right? From black soil to, say, clay soil, muddy soil, whatever the different types of soil that are there, right? Talk about India's latitudinal expanse, longitudinal expanse, having a bearing on the rain systems that so arrive, that eventually drive my climate, my vegetation. Why not? Is that not the cause-effect relationship that we often discuss? Hai ki nahi? Right? And when you're discussing wildlife sanctuaries in rainforest regions, think of all of the areas, say, around Western Ghats. Think of all of the wildlife sanctuaries that you can think of there. How are they benefiting mankind? You know, they are biodiversity hotspots, right? Endemic species. Talk about the work of Agharkar Research Institute. Again, Hindu people. Agharkar Research Institute, Pune, right? Which has gone and found 62 endemic species in these wildlife sanctuaries. Why not? Hindu ka kab use karenge? Hindu or Express? Many people go and read these newspapers religiously. This is where you go and use that information, guys. Okay? This is a point that I don't think many would have cared to include in today's answer. Even though this must have been in the news, 3 weeks ago? 4 weeks ago? Fresh in the news hona chahiye. If I can remember it, obviously someone who's preparing, studying for 12 hours a day will remember it. Yes? Let's look at the answer. Chali. India, being a part of the biogeographical realms, Oriental and Palearctic, has rich diversity. Thereafter, the factors responsible: climate, temperature and precipitation. If you go ahead and include 2 lines about climate classification, it's not going to hurt you here. Why? Because it showcases that you're linking classification to these parts. Correct? Good answer, Tanish. Excellent. Talk about the arc diversity. Yes, the arc diversity, the Therai arc diversity, for example. Why not? Why not? Good. See, this is the initiative what I like. Let's look at this. You're looking at soil, obviously. You're looking at altitude, topography, right? You're also thinking of photoperiod. Which area receives more sunlight, direct insolation, which means more energy for the plant to go ahead and create food, right? You're looking at alien and invasive species. Any conversation around plants, around flora, fauna, this is a ready-made point that you have. You don't need to go ahead and say not include it. You have to include it. Because eventually, is that not a reality? Huh? That say your invasive species are directly linked to the health of the wildlife and the forest, the wildlife sanctuaries. Correct? Talk about the fact that, well, these particular wildlife sanctuaries, their significance is that, say for example, if tigers are found there, Nagarhole, Bandipur, for example, okay, you go ahead and if you find tigers there, Karnataka again, Madhya Pradesh again, tiger corridors exist. What does that tell you? That you have the health of the forest that is pristine. Yes, talk about the effect that a tiger has in, say, the health of the forest. Okay, talk about the significance that it adds to the forest. Hai ki nahi? Think of for a moment. Are we brainstorming in the right manner or not? Correct. Now, as someone who is again looking to appear next year, this is what I expect of you. That you are going to approach each question not just from the book, because your answer needs to be little different from the rest if you're going to get selected. Or else, you know what? Everyone who wrote mains would be getting an IS posting. That doesn't happen, no? Some students are doing something extra. What is it that they're doing? This is what they're doing. They're linking things outside the realm of anyone's thought. Okay? Let's look at the other factors that I have for you. Water conservation. These forests again. The roots are spread far and wide. Your runoff is less. Right? Your soil strength is good. Your water table is high there. All of that, why? Because the wildlife sanctuary in the tropical rainforests have that ability to do so based on the expanse of the forest. Okay, you're looking at conservation, soil conservation, all of that follows there. ठीक है? Okay. Sequestration, research and scientific understanding, Agharkar Research Institute, चिपका दो इधर. Ecotourism, conservation of biocultural diversity, obviously. Yes, that eventually it's people who are linked to the forest, that their traditions are linked to the forest, that you have tribal groups that are associated with the forest that come up with their own, say, traditions. Am I thinking in the terms of the recent movie that had come? Kantara. How many of you have seen Kantara? Tell me. What did you learn from that movie? That yes, the people of the forest have their way of life, livelihood, their culture, their traditions, all of that linked to the forest, and that needs to be respected. It's sacrosanct. Yes, when you talk about inclusive development, it is not inclusive if the people of the forest are not included in that conversation. Yes or not? True. So that's what Kantara was. Not just a very excellent movie, it had a good message for all of us. Translate that message in that answer here. Is that not what the wildlife sanctuary in tropical forests was all about, guys? Where was the Kantara story based? South India, tropical forest. What was it talking about? The very significance that wildlife sanctuaries have, not just as an entity, but also as a partner to people. Yes or not? Batao mujhe. Or am I wrong here? Let me know that too if I'm wrong. If you think I'm wrong, let me know. Okay. And finally, the last one. Why did human development fail to keep pace with economic development in India? So many reasons you can come up with. Yes, so many reasons. And if you begin again from the British time up until say 2023, okay, come from in a chronological manner. Okay, first things first, these fellows did not have the say the whole concept of inclusive holistic growth. For them, India was like a milch cow. They wanted to go ahead and get as much milk from her and then left her to dry. Which means the problem arises where? With the British government that went and exploited the exploitative model, which disregarded people's aspirations. People's aspirations were not catered for, never. Yes, your books will tell you, oh, railways was there to go ahead and build bridges during British time. I'm sorry, that is propaganda. The railways was there specifically to go ahead and serve the interests of the Britishers, not ours. Which means what? No development. It is a purely exploitative model that is being followed. Okay. Thereafter, come to post-independent India. That the planning process that was adopted was flawed. Was it not? Yes. You had centers of growth that were isolated. Yes. that say tier 2 cities that now we talk about, that are becoming say the next generation of growth centers, that has come much later in India's developmental trajectory. That almost didn't come up until say the 90s. After the LPG is when you see these say tier 2 cities emerge. Up until then, if you wanted a good high paying job, शहर जाओ, Kolkata जाओ, Bombay जाओ. Why? Why couldn't someone find a job right there in their own town? Because an inclusive model of development wasn't followed. If an inclusive model of development wasn't followed, will human development follow? No. Will your life expectancy increase? Obviously not. How will you don't have access to health, sanitation? पहले ही मरोगे ना तुम तो. Correct? Yes or not? Tell me. Are you able to appreciate how you are going to approach the answer? Okay. Next, come to say post-independent again. Talk about say the Green Revolution. That say a local model of development was followed. That yes, Green Revolution did benefit states, but was that benefit percolated down to every state? No. Did that benefit percolate down to every segment of the society across the country? No. Correct? Even up until now, you look at regional disparity. Northeast is still catching up. Why is that? Because again, the model of development so far, say up until LPG 1991, wasn't really inclusive. Why? Access to opportunity was limited. Are you able to grasp the essence, guys? That is what you're looking to do here. Okay, let's look at these slides that I have for you. Okay, HDI. So when you're talking about HDI, talk about life expectancy, talk about health, talk about education, and then link it to all these events, beginning from Britishers up until 2023. You must have read, say 60, 70 years earlier, the life expectancy in India was how much? 50, 45, 50. Today it is what? Close to 70. Why? Because eventually this has paid off. The state went and invested in these, and that came as a result of the economic development and the fruits of that percolated down to every part of the Indian society. Yes or no? This is going to be a primary focus, your approach to solving any question, guys. Okay. All right. If you have any questions for me, let me know. Okay. You will find the entire PDF of this particular lecture that will be uploaded on my Telegram channel. I will be uploading it say after midnight this evening. Okay. And if you have any doubts that come out of this, okay. So when you are talking about say human development, you will eventually talk about the measures that are taken by the government of India, right? Right from say sector wise. Don't just talk about the larger aspect. Talk about the human development policies of government of India for say women, for senior citizens, for children, for tribal groups, for the say vulnerable groups across the society, for Divyangs. Of course, policies exist for each of them, don't they? When will you showcase your knowledge then? This is a good place to go ahead and showcase all your policy knowledge. All the policies that you ratify in your India yearbook and the other notes that you prepare, use them here. This question begs for policies. Clear? Are you able to get it? Right? Okay. So that is it from my side. Oh, we have one more. Good. From being a net importer in 1960s, India has emerged as the net food exporter to the world. If you look at the food exporter conversation, right now we are looking at what? Say rice, wheat, and say barley. These are our primary exports in terms of food. Are we still exporting say horticulture or say the other fruits and vegetables? No, we are still not doing that. Okay. So why is that? Once again, what is the journey, the developmental trajectory of India's food security is what you have to grasp here. Correct? Millet. Yes, Hirak. The question begs for millet. You know what it talks about? This net food exporter has to include the word millet, because this is the primary focus of the government of India this year. Yes. So the different revolutions that you had, pink revolution, aqua revolution, blue revolution, the different colors. What was the effect of those revolutions in those individual sectors? Correct? Let's look at the answer. See, this is the approach you are going to take. So from 1960-61, you are first looking at cereals. Today, we are looking at say exports of Indian basmati and wheat. Primarily, we are the exporters of this. But the problems that have say arisen out of over the years. Number one, financial inclusion, technological advancement, irrigation, all of that has led to what? Our food security. At a time, again, if you have read, say, the postmodern history of India, you must have observed that at one particular time, India was forced to go ahead and ask for food grains from a foreign country. Our Prime Minister had to go ahead and ask for food grains of a particular variety. From there on, we have developed this journey where we are exporting food grains to the very country now. How did that happen? Because of a concentrated policy adopted by the government of India. You know, dil pe lag gaya wo baat, isliye today we have become a major exporter, but in terms of cereals only. We are yet to reach that benchmark when it comes to fruits, vegetables and the other associated products. Okay, and so policy framework usme bhi aap daliye. Let's look at the policy framework. Okay, here issues plaguing low GDP, lack of branding, non-tariff barriers, your agricultural productivity is less. Why? Because of the reasons that we discussed earlier in this class. Correct? Ajay Shangden, the 5-year plans. Now, the planning question was earlier. Remember when we were discussing, say, why is economic disparity in human development, why is that existing in India? The primary criticism when you discuss the post-independent Indian history is that our initial planning process was, say, flawed. Okay? That yes, even though we laid the foundation of what we have become today, the problem was that it was not inclusive. Correct? So I hope you understand that concept there. In terms of food products, of course, our priorities post-independence were completely different. We were, say, going ahead and assimilating a lot of problems, getting rid of them. It was primarily a problem of integration. From that problem, we have now come up and, say, overcome that. And now as a country, you have a focus goal that, okay, this is the area where I'm going to go ahead and excel in. However, you find that food productivity is one where we are still lacking behind. Why? Structural problems. First problem we discussed, land holdings. Number 2, that's a large workforce in agriculture, but the productivity is not as high as, say, the other countries. Correct? So I don't want to extend, by the way, because I have got Abhishek sir who is waiting with his session, and so go ahead. If you have any questions for me out of the questions that we discussed today, okay. More importantly, look at the framework that we adopted for solving the questions. You are going to employ that very framework in, say, any type of question that you practice here on, right? That is going to be a primary agenda. And if you're appearing for next year, if you want to go ahead and take a slight challenge, the questions that I've discussed today, yes, the further points are so provided, go ahead and write down answers. Okay, that will help you a lot insofar as finalizing the understanding gaps that may so arise out of this whole discussion. Right. So with that, I will hand over to my dear friend and my colleague Abhishek sir, who will take this discussion forward.
Thank you so much, sir. And it was really a wonderful session that you have held. So I hope that students were enjoying it thoroughly. So now, guys, we are going to start the discussion of the questions which have been actually asked in the subjects of Indian history. Also, I will be discussing and taking the questions which have been asked from the section of Indian society. All right. So I hope that everybody has clearly watched the question paper. They have clearly seen everything. But now let me tell you one thing, that here we are going to discuss about the first question first of all. So just let me start it once from the beginning. Okay. All right. So the very first question is right in front of you. Acha, previous surname, his name is Bhuvan Jha, right? He also brings the session on the Hindu analysis daily in the morning. You can check that session as well on our channel. So guys, here is the first question right in front of you. Explain the role of geographical factors towards the development of ancient India. Now, before moving further or before proceeding, let me just discuss a very important thing with all of you. Most of the students are worried about one thing, that from where have they asked the questions in the examination, from which source, isn't it? Many of you are, I think, worried about the sources particularly. Now, let me tell you one thing, that sources are basically the conventional sources. very conventional sources. This question is directly asked from, it is directly asked from the chapter on the geographical setting. Okay, geographical settings. That book is R.S. Sharma. Okay, R.S. Sharma. This particular question is directly asked from that particular book. However, now the difference is that how do we approach this question? Now that is going to create a lot of credentials for you. So let me just explain that to all of you, that here what is the most important thing, that when we talk about the geographical settings, okay, or geographical understandings. So once again, just read the question clearly, right? Read the question clearly once again, and here explain the role of geographical factors towards the development of the ancient India, towards the development of the ancient India. This is the question, right? So, role of geography, development of ancient India. Ancient India. How to solve the questions? First of all, let me just tell you that there are some keywords which we need to recognize in any question. So there are two keywords here in this particular question. What are those two keywords? Geographical factors and development of ancient India. Now let me just tell you one thing. When we talk about the geographical factors, you can have so many things. For example, first of all, you will be writing the introduction, right? The introduction will be including what? It will be simply statement of the significance of geography, that for example, the geographical settings of any space, of any country, are the primary factors which determine the historical development, since the human settlement, agriculture and other socio-economic activities, they are always related and dependent upon the geography of any specific region. That is a very brief introduction which you need to write into such questions. And since you have just 150 words to finish your answer, now let me just draw the main body for you. So here, geographical factors, okay, just heading will be there, geographical factors, and after that you will be able to write these things like, first, for example, Himalayas, okay, Himalayas. Similarly, you can write anything like any mountains, or you can also write down the terms like topography. So anything related to geography or the shape of the particular land. So topography, the first factor, presence of the rivers, okay, presence of the rivers, the second factor. Then there will be the third factor like the presence of the minerals, okay, presence of the minerals. After that, you can write down the fourth factor, that is the presence of soil and vegetation. Soil and vegetation. In fact, before that, I would say this is the fifth point. The fourth point should be the rainfall and climate. Now let me just ask you one thing, that when it is saying that ancient India had a major contribution by the geography, and I have given you some factors like the topography, like the presence of the rivers, like the presence of the minerals, rainfall and climate, presence of the soil and vegetation. Now just answer me in the comment box, how would you correlate the distinct developments which occurred in the historical era due to these factors, right? I am just here to give you that hint from which you will actually understand that how to get the answer of this question. Okay, so you know it very well. Earlier I was actually giving you the example here itself, but now I have written the feature. So now topography, for example, in the development of the ancient Mahajanpadas, or in fact, before that, in the prehistoric period, the Stone Age, either it is Paleolithic or Mesolithic or Neolithic Stone Age sites, they are always dependent upon the topography, like where the presence of stones that is readily available, where there is the availability of water. So stone availability and water availability depends upon the topography of the land, and that results into the development of Stone Age settlements. Similarly, if we compare the topographical features of the presence of Himalayas, Himalayas have decided the climatic conditions in the northern plains as well as the foothills of the Himalayas, due to which we have the perennial rivers, we have the regulated temperature, which helped in the development of a specific climate in India, which resulted into the historical developments like the civilizational growth, like the development of agriculture in certain areas. Okay, so this is how you can exactly connect. Now coming to the specific examples. Here you can see that basically Himalayas is given as an example which acted as a barrier as well as the decider of the India's polity and history. In fact, when we talk about the growth of certain Mahajanpadas or political states in the foothills of the Himalayas or in the river plains, those river plains were also formed due to the Himalayas. Those foothills, right, they also supported the growth of the earliest settlements in their area like the Shivaliks. Okay, when we talk about the safety of India from the Siberian winds, protection of India from Siberian winds resulted into what? Resulted into the comparatively warmer climate of India. That resulted into the fertile land as well as the great production of the food grains, and that resulted into the development of the civilization in the Gangetic Valley. Okay, so this is how you can simply use the geographical settings to describe the historical development. Not only that, in fact, if we talk about several other factors, if you are unable to recall the significance of Himalayas in the development of agriculture or something, then you can at least use this additional point like the passes. They are present in Himalayas. Those passes actually served as the path of connectivity between India and the Central Asian regions. For example, Khyber Pass or Bolan Pass or Gomal Pass, all these. From those passes, what happened? The various migrants or various adventurers, they came into India, and the result was that our culture, composite culture, it became a reality. Our composite culture became a reality. Okay. Similarly, when we talk about the other aspects, you can take any of these examples in your answer. So you don't have to write everything here, right? You can take any of these examples, like suppose the role of Western Ghats in deciding the historical development, like for example, the Western Ghats results into the rain shadow zone in the inner Maharashtra, which resulted into the presence of poor population there. However, the difficult life conditions, they led to the emergence of the Maratha community as great warriors. Alright everybody. So here also you can use the example from the various other aspects of geography, and geography does not only mean the physical geography. You can also take the example of the economic and social geography also, right? But let me tell you one thing. This question, it has to be written in just 150 words. Therefore, we don't have to expand it much because there is a possibility of lot of expansion. But we have to keep it very short and restricted. So now just let me form this answer for you. Okay, just so how can we write the exact answer of this particular question? I am just giving you the structure of main body. Okay, nothing else. So here the features which determined the historical developments, they are following, right? They are following. Okay. First of all, Himalayas, then decided the climate and political separation affected the growth of earliest republics. Okay. After that, second feature, that is monsoon here affected agriculture. Okay, precipitation and led to the trade relations with, okay, trade relations and cultural contacts with Gulf region. And we all are aware that Gulf region, their cultural contact with India resulted into the significant changes in history. Similarly, northern plains, then highly fertile and led to the emergence of urban civilizations. Okay. Then after that, you can also write down the Thar Desert and Aravallis. Then impact was that the difficult terrains led to the plural or multiple fighting clans collectively called as Rajputs. Then similarly, rivers, okay, then example you can say like Ganga, Son, Gandak, etc. surrounded the city of Patliputra and helped building the vast Magad Empire. Okay, vast Magad Empire. So I hope that there are various other examples which you can use. I have just used 5 examples or 5 such features of the geography which resulted into the formation of the ancient Indian history. All right, you can use your own examples, but try to understand that there can be number of examples which have decided the ancient Indian history. Now, moving to the further details, in fact, you can use the mineral sources, right? You can also use this, different type of sources related to the population, right? Related to the availability of the stones or anything. Now, moving to the next question, or question number 2. All right. What was the difference between, sorry, this question is already dealt. So the ancient history, second question is there. Let me just check that. Okay. Now, okay, question number 11th. So this is the next question from the ancient history. What are the main features of the Vedic society and religion? Do you think some of the features are still prevailing in the Indian society? Now this question is quite easy and very direct question. Whenever you go through R.S. Sharma or even the new NCERT or any other newspaper editorials, whenever there is a topic related to the Vedic culture, then you can observe that there are still certain traditions which are related to the Vedic customs and rituals, and they are still prevalent in our country. More than any source or more than any academic source, I would suggest that this question is actually the combination of the academic sources as well as the sources which are taken from the surroundings. Okay. Dipanshi is saying that coastline helped the Cholas to expand their territories to Eastern Asian countries. Exactly, Dipanshi, absolutely correct. But I hope that you are able to recall that question was saying the ancient Indian history, right? Exactly. That should be limited to the ancient India only. That is why I gave the 5 examples and connected the development of prehistoric sites, development of the Mahajanpadas and other urban civilizations, development of the Magad Empire, and the development of the fighting clans, right? Fighting clans. The Rajputs as a fighting clans, they started to emerge in the end of the ancient history, towards the end of the ancient history. Okay, that's why those examples were given. Got it? Now moving to the next question. Here we are seeing that question is asking about the features of the Vedic society and religion. There are 2 questions. Vedic society and religion, you have to tell the features. So what are the keywords? Keywords are Vedic society and religion. The first keyword is Vedic society and religion. And what you have to tell here, you have to tell the features. Okay. The second keyword is that features prevailing in Indian society. Okay. Second keyword is the features prevailing in Indian society. Okay. Now you have to tell, right? You have to tell that, and what is the direction? What is the directive given to you? Directive is, do you think? Do you think? Which means that it is an opinion based question. It is an opinion and analysis. Okay, opinion and analysis based question. Okay, everybody. I hope you got the point here. You got the point here that opinion and analysis based questions are really crucial. Here you are having the ample freedom to express yourself, but given that you must follow the limit, the word limit of the question. All right, everybody. So here, since this question is a 15 marker question, how many? 15 marks are given for this particular question. That means you have to write in 250 words. So you can simply begin with the introduction, basic introduction, that Vedic period is the name given to the time span during 1500 BC to 600 BC, characterized by the emergence of a rich literary, cultural, pastoral, agrarian and ritualistic society which existed or which survived in the northern and northwestern areas of the Indian subcontinent and slowly expanded to the other parts of the country over the centuries. Alright, so this is how you can simply write the introduction, very compact introduction, but having all the necessary informations as well. So this is how you can simply reduce the number of words, but you cannot or you should not reduce the information. Remember that. Now, coming to the main body part, what are the keywords? Vedic society and religion and its features So here, put the heading. What should be the heading? Okay. What should be the heading? The features of Vedic society and religion. This is the heading. Now, you can simply write down the Vedic age or early Vedic age and later Vedic age. Okay, and you can make this particular type of table, and here you can write down the religious features. Okay, religious features, and in the next part you can write down the social features. Okay, social features, because they are asking the question related to the features in society and religion, isn't it? So religious feature and social features, very simple. And you also understand that the features in the early Vedic age were different and the later Vedic age were different, isn't it? So how can you signify that? In the religious feature, religion was right, simple polytheistic, nature worshippers, okay, nature worshippers, anthropomorphic, okay, anthropomorphic. Not only that, you can also write down, for example, worshipped for materialistic gain, okay, materialistic gain. Then sacrifices, hymns, okay, sacrifices, hymns, and numerous offerings. Now you can wonder that why am I writing like that? Let me tell you that they are not asking you to explain those features. They are simply asking you to tell what were the features, right? And since you have less space, since you have less time, but you have to provide maximum information, I am actually writing like that due to the due to the lack of space. You can actually write it down in a little bit better and little bit clean manner, and those students who are watching it and they are planning to appear for the next examination, guys, let me just tell you that you can simply use this type of pattern where you can make a star and write down those features in a clean and well arranged manner. Okay, clean and well arranged manner. It will be looking very impressive. It will be called as a good presentation also, right? Then in the later Vedic period, these features changed. Like what? Like it became complicated rituals, right? Like the rituals like the sacrifices of animal, okay, sacrifice of animals. Then costly religious practices. Then beginning of complicated rituals. You can avoid writing this term beginning of. Simply write complicated rituals. Okay. Then new deities like Prajapati, Prajapati, Vishnu and Rudra. They replaced older ones. Then disallowed non-Brahmanical purohits, offerings at sacrifices, they became compulsory, became compulsory. So all these things, you can simply mention. Just look at the way in which you have to present it. Let me tell you that do not hesitate that you are not writing a complete statement or you are not writing the full sentence there. That does not matter. Just remember that this is the format which you should be following. This is the format, okay? And here in this particular format you can write down like 5-6 points on each sides, okay? And here you can write down the social features, 5-6 points on each side. For example, in the early Vedic age, the society was egalitarian, okay, pastoral, nomadic, then profession based varna, all these things are to be written. Similarly, on the other side you can write down the declining position of the women. Okay, all these things you can write down, that poor position of women. Okay, then birth based varna system, then social discrimination, then social samskaras, then classifications or categorization of family, right, in the gotra. So all these things, gotra system and sanskar system and different type of marriages, right, different type of marriages were there. All these things you can write down in the later period, and then the question is asking in the second part. What is the question? It is asking that some of the features is still prevailing in the Indian society. So definitely you can use these things, like some of the features. You just put the heading, the features still prevailing in the Indian society. So here you can write down certain features, right? Certain features which are prevailing in the Indian society, like the first and the foremost, Varna system. Varna system disguised and evolved as casteism. Then you can write down the tradition of chanting and ritualistic yagya, that is the sacrifices. Then marriages, marriages as religious and social institutions. Then family categorization, categorization on the basis of Gotra system, Gotra system. Then Vedic age ethos, like the family and its prestige, like preference to male child, like worship for materialistic advantage. You can write down so many things, because in our country, even the later Vedic deities, and early Vedic mantras or hymns, they are still very much used. I hope that everybody will be agree to this particular point, don't you? So here let me just tell you one thing. That when we talk about the Vedic age ethos means the general conduct or the general etiquettes that our society is following. Even today we are using the statements from Mahopanishad, which is a literature of the later Vedic period. From Mahopanishad we are using this statement of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. I hope that everybody remembers that Ayam Nijah Paroveti Gadana Asilagu Chetasam Udar Charita Namatu Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So this particular statement itself is enough to tell that India is still using the Vedic chant in the G20 summit as its motto. In fact, you can also use the example of Gayatri Mantra, which is still popular in the society but belongs to the third mandal of Rig Veda, composed by Vishwamitra during the early Vedic period. Right? Similarly, the worship of Lord Vishnu or the worship of fire is still considered as a sacred deity in our culture, and still we are following it. In our society, the marriages are still regarded the best when these marriages are the Brahma Vivah, as per the description in the Vedic culture. Not only that, our festivals or our rituals, they are still incomplete without pouring the havan or giving the ahuti, that is the offering to the celestial deities, as done during the early Vedic culture. Alright everybody, so I hope that all of you got the clear understanding and clear idea that what does it mean when we say the continuation of the culture from the Vedic till today. Right everyone, now make it sure that you can also see these things. Right, here the question is already solved for you. You will get this PDF as well. So early Vedic society, here it is saying that largely egalitarian, tribal, social relations on the basis of kinship, no caste division, and then after that, tribal and occupation was not based on the birth. Number of family could adopt different occupations. All these things are discussed and completely described. Now, just one second. Just a second. Okay. Now here, when we talk about the features, so you can actually see these things which are written in the PDF clearly, and you can simply describe these things as well. Position of woman is also taken care to understand the meaning in the society. Right. Early Vedic period, the position of woman was different. In the later Vedic period, the position of women became quite different. Then let us come to the next question here. The next question is basically related to the what were the major technological changes introduced during the Sultanate period. This question is very, very important, very, very important. And guys, remember that whatever things are written or in this particular PDF, these are only for the reference, because many of you might be thinking that it is too large like for an answer. So that is why I have actually provided you the very brief and very crisp approach in this answer. This approach is actually you can use directly in the exam hall. In the next year, suppose if the similar type of questions are coming, you can simply use it there in the exam hall, right? This should be your method. This should be your method, writing the answer in a very, very compact manner so that it does not take much time and does not take much space. Now, there could be a question that how many pages or how many words are exactly enough. So, suppose if you are writing like say 100 words in a single page or 80 to 90 words in a single page, then 2 to 2.5 and 3 pages, right? 3 pages are at max. 3 pages at max they are required to write the answer of 15 marker. Okay, everyone. Now, moving to the next question, that is question number 12. Question number 12 is related to what were the major technological changes introduced during the Sultanate period. How did those technological changes influence the Indian society? Okay. Now, this particular question is a very, very crucial question, because usually there is a trend that we ignore the medieval history. We also ignore that there could be any sort of development in the medieval history. Nowadays, it's almost a fashion to say that medieval age was the darkest age of the country. It's not exactly like that. And why so? Because whenever there is the introduction of any new technology, that is the result of the advent of a new idea. And more often, not in the modern period, in the ancient and medieval period, the new ideas often came along with the advent of the new communities. So, when we talk about the medieval period, the advent of Sultanate rulers, that resulted into the devastation as well as the inclusion of a few new things. So, now here let me just tell you one thing, that how do you need to approach this particular question. Fortunately for the students, the questions asked in the history, they were quite straightforward, quite direct questions. These are the questions which you will be getting straightforward in the textbook. Satish Chandra, which is actually a very popular book for the medieval history. In that chapter, the society and life in the Sultanate period, there is a chapter, isn't it? There is a chapter, Society and Life in the Sultanate period. In that chapter, you have a dedicated couple of paragraphs to discuss about the technological changes which occurred during the Sultanate period. That will be very much helpful for you, because that is from where we can understand this answer. Okay, everybody. Now here, there are questions like the keywords, the keywords in this particular question, that is major technological changes. Major technological changes. And what is the basis? Basis is basically Sultanate period. Okay, Sultanate period. Okay. Then the second statement or the directive, what is the directive here? Directive is how did those changes influence the Indian society? That means the directive is how. Okay. And what is the next keyword? Influence on, influence on Indian society. Indian society. Now, this is really important for everyone to understand the influence, right? The influence on the Indian society. This is the exact thing which you have to tell, but before that, you have to tell the major technological changes. Okay, everybody? Sir, should I go with NCERT or published books? See, first of all, let me tell you one thing, that StudyIQ has published the modern history book, okay, and the book of the art and culture. StudyIQ has not yet brought the medieval history book, so that's why when you talk about the modern history book, that includes probably each and every question. Very soon we will be coming up with the evidential videos, like which particular topic is covered from which part of that book. So that's a different thing. But for the ancient and medieval, the historical portion particularly, you can actually rely on the R.S. Sharma and Satish Chandra, because those are two such time tested and standard books which are very popular as well as quite substantial for the examination of UPSC. Now here the keywords, major technical changes, and you have to tell the influence. So let us start understanding the major technical changes. Okay, everyone. Now here, when we talk about the major technological advancements or technological changes, so here first of all, the introduction of gunpowder, the very first one, introduction of the gunpowder. Then second thing, introduction of the matchlock muskets, right? Matchlock muskets. Then third thing, architectural technologies. Okay, architectural technologies like the arc and dome construction. Okay, arc and dome construction, like char bagh, char bagh style, like the cisterns, cisterns and fountains, etc., etc. Then after that, we can also include into this the technologies, right? The technologies of technologies of handloom weaving. Now many people will be saying that handloom weaving was existing in India since the Harappan civilization. Not exactly, actual right, we had the knowledge of making the textiles, but we had the looms which were operated separately. The looms which were actually combined and larger looms, they started arriving in India since the beginning of medieval period, right? Since the beginning of medieval period. In fact, you will again be surprised to understand or to learn that we actually got the knowledge of stitching, knowledge of stitching the cloths again from the Central Asia, got it? Because we used to wear the unstitched cloths. I know you can simply connect it with the Harappan civilization. From that particular time until the arrival of the medieval age, or until the arrival of the Delhi Sultanate rulers, the stitched cloths were not very common. In fact, during the 7th, 8th, 9th centuries, the Arab traders, they were trading with the western coastal areas. They introduced the stitched cloths. So there are actually sources. This is actually the point which might be disputed for some people, but there are sources which suggest that the stitched cloths, they were actually not an Indian tradition. We used to wear the wrap arounds, or we used to wear the shawl or the drape the cloths, like the drape the cloth sheets like sari or dhoti or dushala. All these are the Indian way of clothing, isn't it? Now, after that, now see glass making. Once again, let me just make it very much clear to you that these are very sensitive points, because many people will not be agreeing to this. But glass making was actually introduced after the Central Asian advent, okay, after the introduction of the Central Asian invaders. However, the Harappans were aware about the construction of the ceramics. We already know that there is a place in Gujarat called Deshalpur. In that place, we have the evidences of the glazed tiles back from the Harappan period, but unfortunately we had lost this technology, and that technology could be re-obtained only when the Sultanate rulers, they started establishing their own factories. Okay, so that's why it's very, very important to learn these things. Now, when we talk about when we talk about other technologies like Arghat, okay, Arghat, or the Persian irrigation wheel, Persian irrigation wheel, okay. Apart from that, the technology of surveying, okay. So all these things, they became common, and let me just tell you that I am not including, intentionally I am not including the culinary habits. What is the culinary habits? Basically, culinary habits are actually the cooking methods, even that is also a technology, isn't it? The food technology or cooking technology. There are numerous cooking methods which were introduced during the Sultanate period, but we are not talking about that actually. Matchlock muskets. What is the meaning of the matchlock muskets? Matchlock muskets, basically those muskets in which the explosive powder is filled, and then there is a lock system in which you simply lock it. And matchlock is basically when you lock the explosive inside the barrel of the gun, then you fire the gun. You fire the gun by using a matchstick. Using a matchstick, okay. From that particular fire, this is called as the manual ignition. From that particular fire, the cannons are exploding, okay. So that is what exactly called as the matchlock muskets, okay. This technology was again introduced during the Sultanate period. Then here it is written properly in the form of different categories like Persian wheel, Gaze-Sikandari. It is related to the land measurement. Then in a textile, spinning wheel, pit loom, draw loom. I told you that these things are actually introduced by the Turkish invaders. Now, apart from that, in metallurgy, the bore pits or the deep mines, all these things, or pulley, etc., these are used by after the advent of the Turks. Then one of the very, very important thing, that is the paper manufacturing, okay, paper manufacturing. Now this is something which was missing in India, and it could only be learnt once the Delhi Sultanate started to rule over here. Why so? Because the paper manufacturing was actually learnt by the Central Asians with the help of Chinese travelers. And unfortunately, the Chinese travelers or the Chinese connection with India, particularly northern India, it had completely ceased by the 9th, 10th century. And the Turks' advent, that was the only way that the knowledge of paper manufacturing could reach to India. This is the last point which you can add here, right? Surveying and then paper manufacturing. Paper manufacturing. All right. So these points will be good enough. Now you just have to explain these points and suppose if you are writing these 5 points or 6 points, and then you are explaining these points with the influence on Indian culture, because this is just one part. In the second part, you have to explain the influence also on the Indian culture, and that will be basically the next part of this question, where when we talk about the influence, right, then you can simply understand that influences, right, that would be multiple. In front of every invention or every new technology, you can simply write down the influence. Like, for example, use of the ark and dome. I have told you, use of ark and dome. Then here, what is the impact of that? Promoted the cultural and religious exchange exemplified by the structures like Taj Mahal, and also enabled the congregations of the individuals to pray collectively and simultaneously at a time, at a place, right? Similarly, the paper manufacturing, what was the impact of the paper manufacturing on the society? Paper manufacturing led to the expansion of the literature and literary works, and the scholars started becoming more well known. Rather, their writings became available to the other works, other references also. Okay, so this is how you can write down the technological innovation on one side, and on the other side you can simply write down the impact of that innovation or that technological development on the society. Okay, everybody. Now, moving to the next question. Again, this is related to the modern history, so sir has already taken care of that. But let me just solve this question for the, I think this is the, okay. So, I will be importing the other thing. Just give me a moment so that I can actually upload the other files also. Now we will be doing the questions from social issues. So just a second, everybody. Okay. So society, now we are going to talk about the society. So anybody is having any queries or any cross questions, so you can simply ask that. And guys, you can also share this particular session with your friends, so that those who are not watching it, they can watch very clearly, because we are discussing these questions in a very much comprehensive manner. And now we are going to discuss about the society wala part. So that's very important once again. Now, society, right, this is a subject where many people, they do not even pay attention. Whenever it comes to GS1, the people keep on cramming up those subjects like history, geography. But the social issues, that's a very, very significant part. In fact, if you observe the previous year questions, there are at least 5 questions or 6 questions from this particular topic or this particular subject. This year also we have got 5 to 6 questions, very, very important. So let's proceed with the first question here. Do you think marriage is a sacrament, right? Marriage as a sacrament is losing its value in modern India. Now, social issues are actually dealt by a combination of the static knowledge as well as the application of the current affairs. As a subject, this is very, very dynamic. Now, when we talk about marriage as a sacrament, what is the meaning of the sacrament? A sacred institution, okay. Something which is sacred. So my question to everybody is that, what do you think? Tell me in the comment box, everyone, that do you think that marriage is losing its sacrament or losing its value? Anyone? So here, actually this is the question taken from UPSC's question paper. UPSC has given, unfortunately, the wrong spelling. So let me just correct it. Okay, losing. Anyways, so guys, many people are answering it yes. I cannot see many answers. Guys, quickly reply. What is your opinion in this question? That do you really think that marriage is losing its value as a sacred institution? My option will be, or my opinion will be, that yes, it is losing the value. Yes, it is losing the value, because very often we come across such news that the domestic violence is taking place, increasing number of the divorce cases or divorce cases are there. Not only that, even the fake criminal cases are lodged against the family members of the husband or the wife, like that. Increasing cases of the infidelity or the cheating, etc., adultery is also going to take a major hit. In fact, the verdicts of Supreme Court related to IPC section 297, 298, as well as the sections like particularly the 377, that's also impacting a lot. Not only that, the disputes related to the property and alimony after the separation, alimony after the divorce, that has also resulted into the decline in the value of marriage as a sacred institution. So all these things are evidentially enough to prove that yes, definitely marriage is losing its value. But how to write this thing and present this thing in the UPSC question paper as an answer? Let us understand this. So do you think marriage as a sacrament is losing its value in modern India? This is a direct, straightforward question. Okay, a straightforward question. And here let me tell you, how do you approach such type of questions? How do you approach such type of questions? So first of all, word limit is just 150, so you don't need to give the large introduction or bigger introduction. Simply just initiate your answer with discussing the meaning of the marriage and how is marriage considered sacred. Remember that particular point of the Vedic age question where we were talking about the society or the social feature of the Vedic period. Use that knowledge, use that information. Introduction should be written like that. For example, let me just write it down for you, that the marriage in Indian culture is not merely a socio-legal bond, but a sacred ritual tied with strong heritage, strong cultural heritage, leading to Vedic era. So this is actually the basic introduction that could be written here. But remember the fact that after writing the introduction, you have to present such a line or such a case where you can simply enter the main body of the answer. So here what will we do? You will be basically writing down that but as per the NCRB data or as per the surveys conducted on the family or the social conditions in India, the number of failing marriages or the number of abusive marriages are rapidly increasing. It has no more remained a sacrosanct or a sacrament institution. Now simply After writing these 3 to 4 lines, 3 to 4 lines will hardly get you like 30-35 words, right? That much. So after using these 30-35 words, now you can simply go to the main body, start writing your answer and put the headings that how do you exactly think that marriage is losing the value. Now when we talk about the loss of value, so here let me just tell you, you can simply write down these points which I am mentioning for you, that is growing number of separations and divorces. Okay, separation and divorces. Then increasing instances of marriage related criminal cases. Then you can also mention here domestic violence and dowry may have adversely affected the marriages as the institution. Then the Western cultural impact has led to the more pronounced individualism. Okay, everyone, what is the meaning of the more pronounced individualism? Because see, marriage in India is regarded as a mutual courtship where you are basically compromising to some extent, and the other person who is your partner, she or he is also compromising to some extent. But when we have actually borrowed the cultural value systems from the Western world in today's scenario, we are overstressing upon the individualistic approach of our life. We are excessively emphasizing upon the value of our own understandings, value of our own self, rather than the preferences of our life partners. So that is why this is resulting into the devolution of or the dissolution of the marriage very quickly. Not only that, when we talk about other aspects also, then here changing socioeconomic dynamics. Okay, what is the meaning of this changing socio-economic dynamics? For example, that both working individuals, they often end up messing with their personal life. It is a very rare, it's very, very rare that when both the people are working, male and female both are working in a relationship, so it becomes increasingly difficult that either they fight over the issues like time management, or they fight over the issues like the decision making, or they even fight on the issues like having a family or something. Not just that, due to the economic or employment related conditions, husband and wife, they are often living separately, distant from each other, right? So when they are living at a distance from each other, that may result into the cases or increasing chances of the adultery, isn't it? These are very logical things. This question is actually allowing you to think with your mind, okay, utilize your understanding of the people and society That is going to help you to fetch more marks in this question. Do not write those bookish and typical repeated lines. They are not going to help you. So here, changing socio-economic dynamics, like different cities, okay, different cities are there, like job timings are there, like nuclear family issue is there, right? Nuclear family issue is there. All right, decision making problems are there. So all these things actually, all these things actually have resulted into the complete dissolution of the marriage as a common decision making machinery, where the entire emphasis was given upon the collective or upon the collective good. Now the people are simply focusing upon their individualistic goods and individualistic goods, sorry. That is why the secrecy in this relation is actually ending very rapidly, very rapidly. Alright everyone. So we can say that when we will write all these features, these 3 features, 4, 5, then examples, this will be a very good answer, very well balanced answer. Now, when you have to write the conclusion, or do you think that this question asks you that you have to write suggestion also? No, not that much scope. The question does not have that much scope. So you just have to answer what is asked here. No more, nothing less. Got it everybody? So you can simply see the form of the marriage, it is quite changing. Then modern day alternatives are there, changing purpose of the marriage. So all these are very good points which you can simply include in your answers. In fact, let me just take one short moment to tell you, have you ever wondered that when you read the newspapers, there is always a column just under the main editorial. In that column, you will find that sometimes there are certain cases, then there are certain important issues related to the family and child welfare, okay, women and child welfare, family health. These type of secondary articles which are given in the major newspapers, be it Hindu or Express or anything, you are going to get a lot of benefits, lot of help from such articles. So always emphasize upon a thing that whenever there is any such topic like falling value system in our society, falling familial culture in our society, or growing problem of the raising a child, that is also a very important topic. So such type of topics are actually present in the newspapers. Even this particular topic is directly taken from the newspapers only. Yes, it is okay that it is having the combination of several newspaper articles, but yes, taken from newspapers only. Got it? So marriage is changing its form. Like for example, today we are having the different types of marriages. Earlier cases were like the marriage used to take place only with the acceptance of the parents and only in a particular way. But nowadays the self-respect marriage, sologamy, okay, then same-sex marriages, right? Sologamy, what is a sologamy? Recently there was a news, in fact not recently but a few months ago, there was a news that the girl there out in some city, that girl actually married with herself. Now what is that? Nobody can even imagine there was a possibility of marrying with himself or herself a few years back. But currently we can do anything in the name of marriage, right? A few years ago nobody was even able to think that the people from the same gender, they can marry each other. But slowly and steadily this thing is becoming a very acceptable practice in our society. Judiciary has already accepted it, law has already accepted it, and the people are also very positive and very much affirmative to the same-sex marriages. Okay? In fact, the courts are also very affirmative in the name of providing the social and individualistic rights to the men and women, in fact to the women especially, the live-in relationships, which were the big source of the exploitation of the women, in order to secure their interests, the courts have taken decision that when you are spending a specific period, for example say 7 years in the live-in relationships, even they are also regarded as sanctity, as as particular acceptable as a marriage. You are liable to take care of the so-called wife or the partner, whatever thing you can term it as. So that is also a very important reason. Then basically marriages have become more like a personal event rather than a social and cultural event, unlike we were doing in the past. So here we can say that these things have resulted into the decline of the religious significance, and when the religious significance is declining, even the familial values are also declining. Nobody is actually taking interest in saving a marriage. So they are simply focusing upon the separation instead of saving, instead of striving or doing anything else. So that's why, my dear, these all reasons have become very very much significant to simply let the marriage sacrament of the marriage decline very rapidly. Okay, now next question is here. So in this question you don't need to write that much big conclusion. You can simply write down a simple conclusion like this one. While the dynamics of marriage in India are evolving, the institution itself continues to hold substantial importance. It is deeply ingrained in the religious traditions and also the social ethos of India, and therefore the marriages in India, they are increasingly becoming independent and evolved, but still they are largely cultural, religious and orthodox in their entity and approach. Simple conclusion you can put like that. Now when we talk about the next question, question number 9th, very important, again taken from the newspaper article. In fact this question was actually this particular topic was given not just in Times of India, in the Hindu, but also given in the magazine of that called Frontline. Okay, explain why suicide among the young women is increasing in Indian society. Now guys, this particular part is very important to understand here, because Indian society is increasingly seeing such cases. For example, we have the data, we have the data of the NCRB, where out of 1.6 lakh persons, 44,498 were women, right? So that is why there is enough evidence to say that the number of suicidal cases are increasing. When we talk about the reasons for that, you don't have the less number of reasons for the girls, because there are enough reasons. Look at this one. During adolescence, the preference is given to the male child. Gender discrimination is taking place for the girls, so therefore they are having the great social pressure. During the adulthood, instead of allowing them to emphasize upon their career, the relationship that is actually enforced upon them, they are forced for getting married at an early age, right? Not only that, their looks, their appearance, their status, their social symbol, all these things are very important, which result into the peer pressure. In fact, their financial burden is also very crucial, because after the marriage also they are dependent upon the husband's purse, and therefore sometimes when the husbands disallow them to take independent decisions in the monetary matters, they start feeling very much depressed, right? In fact, there are other factors as well. For example, nowadays the cyberbullying has become very common factor. Revenge pornography with the use of deep fake these type of technologies, right everyone? You can see Sulli and Bulli Bai app. This was in the news quite to a great extent. In fact, not more than that, but even the urbanization has led to the lifestyle issues. You can often see such news that a girl was killed by her boyfriend or her partner and was, just living alone in the flat or living alone in the apartments. So these things actually are increasing day by day. That means lifestyle problems are also a big reason, but last but not the least, my dear, mental health status is very, very important factor, okay. So just let me tell you that if you are writing only the points, you are not mentioning the descriptions here, then it is a good approach that write only the points and then write the solutions. That will be good enough to fetch you good marks, better marks in fact in these questions. Now moving to the next question. Child cuddling is now being replaced by mobile phones. Discuss its impact on socialization of the children. Again, the question is taken from the mobile phones, mobile phone and its impact. That is an article often published in the newspapers, often discussed on DD National and Rajya Sabha debates also. So guys, once again, the source is very dynamic. This is not from any book, okay, this is not from any book. So you have to simply write the introduction on the basis of what? On the basis of, that socialization is a process where the individuals like children, adults, anybody, they meet with a different set of people, different group of people. They learn a lot of new things. Got it? But nowadays the parents are simply giving the mobile phones to their children. So it has brought several consequences which are disastrous. I hope everybody will agree to this point. And isn't it? But there are few positive impacts as well. But we have to consider the impact on the socialization, only socialization, that's okay. So here, let me tell you that there are basically it is just not allowing the parents to nurture their connection with the children. The children are getting less time, they are spending less time with the parents, okay, and they are spending more time with the mobile phones. So you can write down impact on socialization of children. It is nurturing the connection with the child, not allowing the transmission of the values, and also it is delaying emotional development. Children are not learning how to behave with the common people. They are not learning how to behave with the family. You can see the anger issues in young children as young as 5, 6, 7 years. You can see the news 9 years old child commits suicide. Now what is that? Basically, that is a negative impact of using the excessive mobile phones and allowing the children to go through such emotional trauma, which is not letting them to grasp anything which is very common. For example, suppose there is a scolding by the parent. A parent is scolding the child, even then also the child is getting hurt. Why? Because when parents were there, they never scolded that child because child was busy in mobile phone. So that is how the socialization is getting poorer and poorer. The cognitive development of the child is very poor. Then physical activity is also reducing, leading to the several health hazards and diseases, etc. Now cyberbullying has become very common. In fact, you might have heard about that game, that deadly game which was very common, which resulted into the death of several children. Okay, somebody tell me the name of the game in the comment box. Anybody remember that name? Yes. Then the child is too much busy in the virtual world, finds more difficult to establish the real connections in the real world. And that is why, my dear, that is why you can see that there are various cases where the inappropriate contents are exposed to the children, and the children, sometimes they commit suicide, sometimes they start playing those dangerous games, these type of things. Okay, now there are a few positive impacts also. For example, during the emergency, the child could be contacted urgently with the help of the mobile phones. There are certain features like emergency alert. If the child is taught using the mobile phones properly, then the emergency alert could be a very significant feature with the help of which the child could be monitored, could be tracked. Right, everyone? So all these things are very, very important. Very, very important. Got it? Now, moving to the next question, which is very crucial to understand. Now, this is the question that does urbanization lead to more segregation and or marginalization of the poor in Indian metropolis? Now, this is the question from the conventional social issue topic. Okay, conventional topic. Here, urbanization, the keyword urbanization, more segregation, again keyword second, and the poor in Indian metropolis, that is the basis. So you have to tell about the poor in the urban areas, but what you have to tell? You have to tell about the urbanization leading to the segregation. Urbanization leading to the segregation. And guys, this is absolutely direct question. No analysis, no understanding, nothing. Does it do? Yes. Then give the reasons or give the examples. Very straightforward, very direct question. So start with a solid introduction here. Okay, start with solid introduction and mention that at which rapid pace the India is seeing the urbanization to occur, and that urbanization has actually resulted into the growth of massive slums in the major cities due to the unplanned and poor urbanization. Now, these things are to be mentioned in the introduction itself. Okay, but then you have to give the heading that the ways in which urbanization leads to the segregation of the poor. Now, you have to tell that there are several things which lead to the marginalization of the poor people in the urban settlements. And then you are, okay, migration, high property cost and high rental rates. Not only that, then poor services, right, poor services availability in the urban areas due to the high involved cost. Okay, not only that, but the social division always it is there. Guys, this particular question is directly from the NCERT class 12th Indian society, directly from there. Okay, so you can actually give the example like the manual scavengers, etc. They live in the urban areas, but they live in probably the most dirty and most pathetic regions, which are not allowing them to get included into the mainstream society. Urban workers are often suffering from the great traveling costs, from the great rental costs, from the great cost of living. So they are unable to save anything and they came poor and they remain poor permanently. Okay. There are the informal jobs called as the gigs. They are not permanent in the nature. Okay. They don't provide the livelihood for a long period of time. Then discrimination is always there, because we all are I think agree on this point that the discrimination is such a feature which takes place with every person working lowly in the poor household or in the poor position or in the low status. Okay. Now, after that, there are other challenges related to the, of course, related to the nutrition, education, etc. Always there. These are challenges are right. Now, policy struggles. What is the meaning of policy struggle, by the way? Policy struggle is actually when the policy makers, they simply don't care for the urban poor. They simply start making the highways, etc. or the making of a flyover or expansion of the roads, etc. They never ever take care of the poor living on the margins of the roadside. They do not care for that. Okay, because there are few cases when we have seen that the governments actually regularize the irregular colonies, but that is just on paper. They don't provide the proper electricity connections. There is no proper sewage. There is no proper connection or the transportation connectivity. So all these things are related to the poor conditions and the marginalization of the workers living in the urban areas. Okay, everybody. Now, financial inclusion and affordable housing, etc. Right. This is also going to be considered, but in a positive manner. In a positive manner. Okay. So, urbanization has impacted in negative as well as in positive. Got it, everyone? So, here I think when we talk about the positive impact, financial inclusion, right? Financial inclusion, that is possible when the poor people are living in the urban areas. Affordable housing is possible due to the PM, right? The PM housing scheme or Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. You can write down the examples also. Similarly, the SKS microfinance or the simply you can also write down the Atal pension scheme or the scheme for the workers who are, or the petty workers or the unemployed people or the informally employed people who are working on the margins. So all these things are actually resulting into the positive impacts also. So the question is asking about more segregation and marginalization. So you are first of all telling some or in fact major negative, but some positive impacts are also there, because that should be told in order to make the answer a little more balanced. All right, everyone. So you can mention the points like government is providing several schemes, etc. But these things are not given not to be given priority. Understand this very clearly, that priority is to be given to the negative points, because segregation is actually happening. Okay. Now, in the way forward, you can write down several progressive programs which are required. Progressive programs which are required to provide the impetus to the inclusion of the poor in urban area more and more. All right. Now, here economic opportunity, social services, medical services, public transportation, all these things are available in the urban areas, or they should be made available to the poor in order to ensure the financial inclusion or general inclusion of the workers in the society of urban areas. Coming to the 19th question, why is caste identity in India both fluid and static? Now guys, this is actually a very deep question. Caste identity, fluid and static, what is the meaning? Fluid means palpable, changing, easily transcendable, but static means here there is the stigma and the stamp of the caste on the person. No matter at what position, at which level the person is, the caste sticks with that person. You have to provide the depth of both of these things. So I can give you a basic idea here. Basically, you have to define the caste as a social groupings or segments where the social status is acquired and fixed by birth, right? There are specific groups called as castes. Now, we have to tell first that why is it considered static? Why is it regarded as static? Okay. So when we talk about the static identity of the caste, then segmental division of society, hierarchy, restrictions on the interdining and intermarriages, these things are prevalent even today. Even today, we are unable to do the intercaste marriages freely without any problem. Even today, there are certain disabilities that people of certain caste are not allowed to enter the house. Okay. the people of certain castes are not allowed to do any other occupation. There are ritualistic restrictions that if you belong to that particular caste, you cannot do that particular ritual. Okay, so you can actually utilize the examples of your own understanding in this type of topic, because everybody is living in the society, everybody is witnessing the caste discrimination, everybody is getting news. For example, you can very easily get that news that the bridegroom was beaten by the upper caste men for going to his own marriage on the horse. Now like that, okay, these type of things, restriction on the marriages, etc. Even today also in the matrimonial columns, we have to mention the caste specifically, because that creates a great hurdle in getting the marriages finalized. No matter how much well are you earning, no matter how much good do you look, that does not matter. What matters? First of all, what is your caste? What is your caste? Okay. But at the same time, we can say that castes identities are also becoming a little bit fluid, becoming a little bit dynamic. Like it started with the freedom movement, when there was a Sanskritization movement during the freedom struggle. Certain social reformers like Bangarkar and MC Raja, etc., they actually emphasized upon Sanskritization of the untouchable communities. They emphasized upon the adoption of the rites, rituals, customs, etc., as followed by the upper caste people, even by the so-called lower caste people. Right? They thought that it will be removing the discriminations, the distinctions between the upper and the lower castes. Unfortunately, that was not very much positive in the results, but that was a very good effort. Then dissociation between caste and occupation, as well as changes in the caste identity. Now guys, in urban areas or even in the common field, I would say, now there is hardly any connection between your caste and your job. For example, suppose if somebody is a Brahman, technically that person should be in the field of knowledge, but that is possible that Brahman might be having a shop and working like a Vaishya. It is possible, na? So that is why nowadays castes have lost their connection with certain occupations. Then even in the identities also, for example, the people belonging to so-called lower caste or so-called upper caste in the society, their respect has now become a byproduct of their economic status, particularly in the urban areas. Okay, particularly in the urban areas. Even in the urban areas, there is no concept of purity and pollution, because this is not feasible. Not feasible to follow the concept of purity and pollution. For example, suppose in urban area or in the field like medicine, field like teaching, field like engineering or any professional field, software development, do you think that you will say that no, this software is developed by a person from the lower caste, I will not use this software? Is it even possible? You cannot even imagine such type of thing. So the concept of the purity and pollution is completely discarded in the modern setup. Then caste organization. Now there are various caste-based organizations which have emerged, which have led to the democratization, which have led to the emancipation of their mass politics. And when, my dear, the caste has become a vote bank, now they are very assertive, very much positive about their discrimination, because now they know it that nobody will do any type of discrimination because they are the chunk of votes. And therefore you are able to see that politicians, they keep flocking to the houses of the different caste leaders, etc. Got it, everybody? So that is how you will write the answer. In the conclusion, you can simply write down that yes, these examples are making it very clear. Last question, discuss the impact of the post-liberal economy on the ethnic identity and the communalism. Post-liberal economy on the ethnic identity and communalism. This is a very, very significant question, my dear. You have to tell the impact of economic changes on the identity of ethnicities and on the communalism. Guys, basically it is relating the economic factors like the demand, supply, market, customers, etc., capital, etc., with the cultural identities like ethnicity, with the communalism. For example, suppose, let me just come to the main point. Okay, let me come to the main point. A post-liberal economy, often referred to as the post-neoliberal economy, it is actually marking a departure. Now everything in the market has become a product. Even your caste, your creed, your race, your festivals have become a product. Okay. Now, when we talk about the ethnic identity and the impact of the post-liberal economy on that, guys, after the post-liberal economy, the importance of wealth has increased rapidly, right? Wealth importance or wealth significance has led to the distinctions or the discrimination on the basis of the poor and the rich. Therefore, the economic disparities, they have resulted into the increasing segregation, right? Increasing segregation on the society, right? On the society and its different parameters. On the society and its different parameters. For example, now you can see the people depending upon their ethnic groups, depending upon their communities, they are asking for the social recognitions, reservation, special provisions, seats, these things. And apart from that, you can see here that even the certain caste and communities are also involved as a political group. For example, you can see that when there was the protest done by the farmers, why was the farm bill being brought in? Because to allow the companies to act as the purchasers and the traders in the agricultural field. Impact of post-liberal economic policy. But this is actually allowing the separation of a distinct group in the society. For example, the farmers from the northern India, particularly the OBC and upper caste farmers from the Punjab, Haryana and Uttar Pradesh, they actually got aligned on the same lines due to the economic factor, right everyone? So that is how even the cultural preservation, even the protest movements, etc., all these have become very much connected to the impact of post-liberal economic policies. In fact, nowadays even the economic policies are also appealing to the cultural identities. Like you might have seen the portals like TriFed. Has anybody seen TriFed? TriFed actually markets the tribal produce. But that is actually related to the preservation of the tribal ethnicity, tribal identity connected by the market, but working to protect the ethnicity. Now that is how it is working. So here you can simply write down political mobilization. I gave you the example of the caste based political parties or the economic policies resulting into the political movements like the farmers movement in Delhi. Then urbanization and migration has also resulted into the urban developments and the changes in the ethnic and cultural identities. Got it everyone? Then social cohesions and tensions are also there. That means what? Guys, the post-liberal economic changes, they have pumped more and more money into the market. And the people who were actually belonging to distinct caste or ethnic identities they have now started demanding the reservation even in the private sector. I think you can understand this thing right now. Apart from that, there are other factors also, like communalism. Right? Communal values are also being fostered, like you can see that market is providing you the halal meat. In India, there is a big issue regarding the halal certified food. The several organizations are supporting or protesting, right, supporting or opposing this type of certification based upon the religious discrimination. But market is doing that because market thinks that a specific group is actually a big market, a big opportunity of earning a lot of money. Similarly, you can understand that there are certain positive things like empowering communities. For example, the women entrepreneurship has become the talk of the town because the women have emerged as a very powerful social grouping. Therefore, market is now identifying them and their potential as a great economic source, a great economic power. That is why market is now promoting the products related to the gender specific identities. Therefore, my dear, you can say that market has got probably, it has got absolutely no religion. It has only one religion, that is making profit. All right. So that's why you can connect it, right? You can connect the example of festivals, etc. All these things with the market. So guys, I think that is all in this session. You can give more and more examples, and conclusion it will be very much formal based upon whatever you have mentioned. Okay, everybody. So thank you so much. And in case if you really want to contact me or stay in touch with me, so you can simply contact me on the email address. This is my email address here. Okay. And we will meet in the StudyIQ. Suppose if you are joining any type of programs or any type of courses, so further we will be meeting in the classes. Till then, thank you so much for watching it. Do not forget to share it to the maximum number of people. This session was intended to give you a basic idea along with the explanation of those ideas to get a clear understanding of the subject. So thank you so much for watching it, guys. Take care, bye-bye, and have a great day ahead. Wish you all the very best for everything. Thank you so much.